Hello, dear listener. Tonight, we begin our gentle journey into the playful and peculiar pastimes of the Middle Ages. As you settle into a comfortable spot, perhaps with a pillow fluffed just right or a warm blanket around your shoulders, allow your mind to drift away from the worries of the present. We are traveling back, far back, to a time when life was hard, unpredictable, and often dangerous, but when people still found ways to experience joy, amusement, and adventure. The medieval period, stretching roughly from the 5th to the 15th century, was a world of contrasts. There were towering castles and humble cottages, sumptuous feasts and meager gruel, plague and prosperity, loyalty and treachery. Most people worked from dawn to dusk, bending under the weight of labor, laws, and feudal obligations. Yet, even in the darkest moments, the human spirit yearned for light. Laughter and levity, entertainment in its many forms, became both an escape and a declaration of life. Imagine, for a moment, the view from a sunlit village green. Children run freely, their laughter echoing across the fields, while adults gather to witness performances by traveling minstrels, jugglers, and acrobats. A blacksmith pauses his hammering to watch a daring young knight just, in a friendly competition, his armor gleaming in the midday sun. In the distance, the spires of a castle rise against the sky, where noblemen and women prepare for feasts, games, and tournaments. This was a world alive with movement, color, and sound. For the nobility, amusement often took on grand and elaborate forms. Tournaments were among the most spectacular events of the age. Knights donned gleaming armor, mounted their powerful steeds, and paraded across large fields lance in hand, ready to demonstrate skill, bravery, and finesse. These contests were more than mere sport. They were a performance for the eyes of the spectators, and a way to climb the social ladder. Wealth, reputation, and influence were often measured by prowess in the arena. And while tournaments might seem like carefully orchestrated displays to us today, early iterations were chaotic and dangerous, often resembling actual combat more than sport. Beyond the clamor of the jesting fields, another form of entertainment involved careful planning, skill, and a touch of danger: hunting. Noble hunts were elaborate affairs that combined strategy, athleticism, and the thrill of the chase. Packs of hounds followed their masters through forests, keen-eyed and eager, while hunters on horseback maneuvered to corner deer, boar, or hare. Hunting was not only a pastime, but also a demonstration of skill, wealth, and status. Every carefully executed hunt, every successful capture, was a moment of pride and celebration. Meanwhile, in the world of falconry, aristocrats developed an entirely different form of amusement, one that combined beauty, danger, and the art of partnership between human and bird. Falcons, hawks, and other birds of prey were trained with patience and care, their speed and hunting instincts harnessed by skilled falconers. The bond between master and bird was delicate, requiring trust, communication, and respect. Watching a trained falcon swoop gracefully through the sky, talons poised, was not only thrilling but also a symbol of refinement, elegance, and status. But medieval merriment was not exclusive to the elite. Common folk found delight in fairs, festivals, and carnivals. These were days when the normal rules of life seemed temporarily suspended. Markets transformed into stages for performers, musicians, and storytellers. Games and contests provided opportunities for laughter, competition, and brief respite from the burdens of labor. Even the simplest amusements, a ball game in a muddy field, a raucous dance, or a playful prank, offered a sense of freedom and joy that was treasured by all who participated. Music and storytelling were essential companions to every celebration. Minstrels and troubadours roamed the land, spreading news, entertainment, and tales of heroism and romance. Villagers and nobles alike listened intently, captivated by the melodies and words that carried them far from their immediate surroundings. In dimly lit halls, near roaring fires, stories were told with gestures, song, and laughter. Children would cling to their parents, wide-eyed, as tales of brave knights, cunning tricksters, and mythical creatures unfolded before them. And so, dear listener, as you close your eyes and let your breathing slow, picture this medieval world in your mind's eye. Feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, hear the murmur of crowds, the baying of hounds, the laughter of children, and the haunting melodies of minstrels. Imagine knights preparing for tournaments, nobles readying elaborate feasts, and common folk dancing through village streets. This world, both harsh and vibrant, was alive with curiosity, inventiveness, and an enduring quest for amusement. As we drift into the coming chapters, you will meet a colorful array of characters: knights, lords, ladies, minstrels, peasants, and even mischievous animals, each finding a way to embrace fun in their own unique and sometimes dangerous ways. Through their stories, you will glimpse the creativity, resilience, and joy of a society that balanced hardship with moments of delight. So, my dear listener, fluff your pillow, close your eyes, and let the gentle rhythm of history lull you into a world of medieval merriment. A world where laughter echoed across castle walls, music danced through streets, and fun, in all its strange and wonderful forms, thrived amidst the challenges of life. Here begins our journey, one that will carry us across tournament fields, banquet halls, village greens, and beyond, as we uncover the strange and fascinating ways people sought joy in the Middle Ages. Good night, and let us step softly into the past together. As the sun rose over the fields of medieval Europe, the air would often hum with anticipation. For noblemen and villagers alike, there were few spectacles as eagerly awaited as the tournament. A medieval tournament was far more than a mere display of skill. It was a carefully choreographed performance, a high-stakes competition, and a social event rolled into one. Tonight, we gently immerse ourselves in the world of these grand contests, where knights clashed in the pursuit of honor, glory, and sometimes just the simple thrill of the challenge. Tournaments evolved significantly over the centuries. Early medieval competitions were little more than mock battles, often chaotic and perilous, where groups of knights would clash to capture each other for ransom. These events could be deadly, with injuries common and fatalities not unheard of. By the 12th century, however, tournaments became more structured. Individual jousts were introduced, allowing knights to face each other one-on-one in a display of precision, strength, and courage. Rules were established, safety measures improved, and the spectacle became a centerpiece of noble life. Imagine the scene: banners and pennants fluttering in the breeze, their colors vivid against the emerald green of the tournament grounds. Rows of tents stretch across the field, each one a temporary home for a knight and his retinue. The clatter of hooves, the clang of armor, and the excited murmur of the crowd create a lively symphony. Merchants hawk food and souvenirs. Minstrels play music to heighten the sense of drama, and townsfolk line the sidelines, eager to witness feats of valor. This was a theater of both sport and status, where every action could bring fame or ruin. At the heart of the tournament was the knight himself, clad in polished armor, helmet gleaming, and bearing a shield adorned with his coat of arms. He was both performer and competitor. Mounted on a powerful warhorse, he galloped across the lists, lance poised, eyes fixed on his opponent. The joust demanded a perfect combination of timing, strength, and skill. One misstep could result in a fall, a broken bone, or worse. Yet the rewards were significant. Winning a tournament could bring riches, land, political favor, and the admiration of noblewomen, who watched from their vantage points along the field. One of the most renowned figures of the medieval tournament world was William Marshall, often called the greatest knight of his time. Born in 1146 as the youngest son of a minor noble, Marshall's path to greatness was unexpected. Initially placed in a church to train as a cleric, he found that a life of prayer and contemplation did not suit his restless spirit. His skill in combat soon caught the attention of influential patrons, and he embarked on a career as a professional knight. Over his lifetime, Marshall is said to have participated in more than 500 tournaments, earning victories, ransoms, and a reputation that would echo through history. His life illustrates the potential for tournaments to elevate a young noble from obscurity to prominence, providing both financial security and social clout. But tournaments were not just about individual glory. They were highly political affairs. Allegiances, rivalries, and family honor all played out on the lists. Consider the famous tournament of 1274 in northern France, where the English Prince Edward, later King Edward I, arrived with an entourage of 200 knights. The sheer size of his group was perceived as arrogance by the French hosts, sparking tension and confrontation. When one of Edward's men defeated the Count of Chalons' son in a joust, tempers flared, leading to a dramatic clash between the English prince and the French count himself. The crowd gasped as Edward deftly parried a lance, then physically unseated the hot-headed nobleman, leaving him sprawled in the mud. It was a moment of triumph, theatrics, and political messaging, all rolled into one unforgettable episode. For spectators, tournaments offered more than just a view of combat. They were immersive experiences, akin to attending a modern festival. The pageantry was as important as the competition. Knights performed elaborate parades, displaying their heraldry and armor, while squires and attendants added color and life to the scene. Musical ensembles played fanfares, dancers entertained the crowd, and storytellers recounted heroic deeds. Vendors sold roasted meats, pastries, and ale, allowing the audience to indulge in small pleasures as they watched the drama unfold. Tournaments, in essence, were a temporary escape from the constraints of feudal life, a time when people could marvel at skill, fortune, and courage. Yet, the danger was never far away. Even the most experienced knights risked serious injury. Broken lances, crushed limbs, and concussions were common, and some did not survive the sport. Tournament organizers sought to mitigate the worst of these dangers through rules. But the element of unpredictability always remained. It was this mixture of calculated risk and skillful display that drew crowds again and again. For both participants and spectators, the thrill of the joust was heightened by the knowledge that the outcome was never certain. As night falls, imagine the crowds slowly dispersing, their conversations buzzing with excitement over the day's events. Knights retire to their tents, tending to wounds, polishing armor, and reflecting on their victories or defeats. The field, once filled with clamor and movement, now lies quiet, bathed in the soft light of lanterns and the fading glow of the sunset. Even as the tournament concludes, its stories live on, retold around hearths, in taverns, and during quiet evening walks through the village. So, dear listener, as you let your eyes close and your breathing slow, picture the glittering armor, the charging steeds, and the clash of lances. Feel the anticipation, the cheers, and the collective excitement that rippled across the medieval tournament grounds. Allow yourself to drift into a world of skill, strategy, and spectacle, where courage and cunning were celebrated, and where the human spirit shone brightly even in a challenging age. Tomorrow, we will continue to explore the fascinating amusements of the Middle Ages, moving from tournaments to the world of hunting, hawking, and the more intimate pastimes of medieval life. For now, rest and dream of knights, banners, and the electrifying thrill of a jest under the summer sun. As the echoes of tournament jests fade into memory, another spectacle of medieval leisure comes to life: the hunt. For nobles of medieval Europe, hunting was far more than a pastime. It was a rigorous exercise in skill, endurance, and social display. The thrill of the chase, the coordination of hounds, the keen eye for tracking prey, all these elements combined to create an activity that was at once exhilarating and highly ritualized. Tonight, let us wander through the forests and fields of the Middle Ages to experience the noble hunt, where danger, pageantry, and sport intertwined in a fascinating dance. A hunting party was never casual. Nobles assembled with an entourage that included servants, falconers, beaters, and of course, hunting dogs. These dogs were not mere companions, but essential instruments in the pursuit of game. Deerhounds, greyhounds, limers, and bloodhounds were trained for specific roles, some to track, some to corner, and others to chase the prey directly. Each dog responded to horns, whistles, or even subtle gestures from its handler, forming a well-orchestrated pack capable of executing complex strategies across vast stretches of forest. The hunt began before dawn. Riders mounted their horses, each animal carefully chosen for endurance, agility, and obedience. Servants prepared the hounds, checking collars and leashes, ensuring that the pack was ready for the tryst. The air was crisp, filled with anticipation. The smell of dew, damp grass, and the distant sound of birds greeting the morning sun. Noble hunters moved with practiced precision, scanning the forest for tracks, broken branches, or other signs of their quarry. Every aspect of the hunt was an exercise in observation and patience, a game that required both cunning and courage. Game varied widely depending on the region and season. Deer and wild boar were prized for their size and the challenge they presented. Smaller animals, such as hares and rabbits, were also hunted, though they demanded greater speed and precision. In some cases, hunting included falconry, where trained birds of prey, perched on a gloved hand, would swoop down upon rabbits, pheasants, or even ducks. Falconry was a highly prestigious activity, demonstrating both wealth and skill, as falconers trained their birds with great patience, nurturing a bond that was as delicate as it was deadly. Imagine the moment the hunt truly begins. Hounds break free from their leashes, noses to the ground, baying excitedly. Riders urge their steeds forward, galloping across uneven terrain as horns and calls echo through the woods. The prey flees, its every movement followed by a flurry of hooves, fur, and bark. The chase is not just a contest of strength, but of strategy: where to cut off the quarry, how to direct the pack, and when to strike. Nobles reveled in the physical exertion, the adrenaline rush, and the skill required to succeed. Each hunt was a test of character, endurance, and patience, with failure often resulting in embarrassment before peers. Hunting was deeply embedded in the social fabric of the medieval elite. A successful hunt could cement friendships, alliances, or rivalries. Stories of daring feats spread quickly, enhancing a noble's reputation. Conversely, a poorly managed hunt could invite ridicule and damage a family's standing. This was not merely sport. It was a microcosm of the societal hierarchies and codes of honor that governed life outside the forest as well. Hunting demonstrated not only prowess in the field, but also leadership, discipline, and an understanding of social nuance. Falconry added a layer of sophistication and prestige. Birds such as merlins, goshawks, and the rare white gerfalcon were highly prized. Handling these magnificent raptors required dexterity, courage, and patience. Young nobles often began their education in falconry early, learning to care for and command their birds, understanding their behavior, and developing the intricate hand signals that allowed the falcon to cooperate seamlessly in the hunt. This pursuit symbolized refinement, wealth, and the ability to command nature itself, a display of control that mirrored societal hierarchy. Even the logistics of a hunt were a spectacle. Forest keepers scouted ahead to ensure that game was abundant and paths were clear. Kitchens prepared supplies for midday meals in the open air, while attendants carried additional equipment such as spears, nets, and hawking hoods. The choreography of people, animals, and horses required coordination that transformed what might seem like chaotic activity into a carefully structured event, each participant knowing their role and the sequence of actions to be followed. Yet, hunting was not without its hazards. Dangerous animals could injure or kill, and even the most experienced rider risked falling or being trampled. Mary of Burgundy, the young Duchess of Burgundy in the 15th century, provides a tragic example. Born in 1457, Mary was passionate about falconry and hunting, often riding with her trained birds perched upon her wrist. In 1482, while out hawking, her horse stumbled, throwing her to the ground. She sustained severe injuries and died a few days later. Even for nobles, whose wealth afforded them the best equipment and training, the hunt could be fatal, a reminder of the risks embedded in these seemingly elegant pastimes. For the peasantry, hunting took on a different form. While the laws strictly limited what game could be hunted by commoners, villagers occasionally engaged in small hunts or trapping for sustenance, often quietly and carefully to avoid punishment. Their hunts lacked the pageantry and prestige of noble pursuits, but the same human fascination with tracking, skill, and triumph was present, reminding us that the instinct to chase, capture, and triumph over nature transcends social class. After a successful hunt, the noble party would return to the castle or manor, their spoils proudly displayed. Roasted meats, pies, and stews prepared from the day's catch were served on trestle tables adorned with colorful linens. Tales of daring, missed shots, and close calls were shared, often embellished for dramatic effect. The hunt concluded with feasting, storytelling, and celebration, a temporary respite from the structured, hierarchical world of medieval life. It was a time to bond, to enjoy the fruits of skill and courage, and to marvel at the natural world while exerting mastery over it. As we close our eyes tonight, imagine the rustle of leaves, the baying of hounds, and the flash of steel and feathers as hunters and falcons pursue their quarry. Picture the thrill, the danger, and the pageantry, all unfolding beneath the canopy of ancient forests. Allow yourself to drift in the rhythm of galloping hooves and the cry of raptors overhead, feeling the excitement and refinement of medieval leisure settle softly into your mind. Tomorrow, we will explore more grounded forms of entertainment, festivals, fairs, and the quirky amusements of common folk. For now, rest in the gentle thrill of the hunt, letting the medieval woods cradle your imagination in their green embrace. As the echoes of hooves and hounds fade from memory, let us turn our gaze to another cornerstone of medieval entertainment, the festivals and fairs that brought communities together in moments of joy, mischief, and respite. Unlike the noble hunts, these gatherings were often egalitarian in spirit, drawing peasants, merchants, artisans, and even minor nobility into a shared celebration of life, despite the hardships of the medieval era. Tonight, we shall stroll through bustling market squares, listen to minstrels' songs, witness pageantry, and glimpse the colorful, sometimes bizarre amusements that filled the medieval calendar with fleeting delights. Medieval fairs were more than just gatherings for commerce. They were vital social and cultural hubs, offering the chance to exchange goods, hear news from afar, and immerse oneself in spectacles of entertainment. London, Bruges, Paris, and Florence all hosted famed fairs, drawing merchants and visitors from across Europe. Spices from the East, silks from Italy, and glassware from Venice filled the stalls, creating a sensory tapestry of smell, sound, and color. The fairs were alive with shouting vendors, clattering coins, and the laughter of children, and the music of fiddlers, lutes, and bagpipes. It was a world in which the mundane toil of daily life was suspended, even if just for a few hours or days. Carnival was the crown jewel of medieval festivity, traditionally observed just before the austere season of Lent. Carnival allowed a temporary overturning of societal norms. Peasants could mock their lords, jesters could outwit the clergy, and the normal rules of decorum were relaxed. Masks and costumes were common, permitting participants to explore identities and behaviors normally forbidden. In Florence, for instance, masked revelers paraded through the streets, singing, dancing, and occasionally performing impromptu plays that satirized local politics or lampooned public figures. Such mischief offered not just amusement, but also a subtle commentary on power and hierarchy. Entertainment at these festivals often involved renowned performers. Minstrels and troubadours traveled from town to town, performing songs of chivalry, romance, and adventure. Figures like Adam de la Halle, a 13th century French poet and musician, entertained crowds with his witty plays and melodies, blending humor with subtle lessons for audiences. Jongleurs, wandering performers skilled in juggling, acrobatics, and storytelling, could captivate an audience of peasants and nobles alike. One can almost picture Adam juggling a set of colorful balls while recounting the exploits of King Arthur or Charlemagne, drawing laughter from all corners of a crowded square. Fairs also hosted contests of skill and endurance. Archery competitions were immensely popular, both as sport and as preparation for war. Nobles and commoners alike tested their precision and bravery, with prizes ranging from small trinkets to fine horses or weapons. At times, mock battles or stage tournaments were performed for entertainment, often featuring figures like Edward I of England or the French noble Bertrand du Guesclin, who might appear in spectacles designed to both amuse and display martial prowess. Children participated in scaled-down games, learning social skills and sportsmanship, while adults could indulge in feats of strength or cleverness. Street performers and magicians also added a layer of wonder to the fairs. Fire eaters, jugglers, acrobats, and illusionists astonished spectators with daring acts that blurred the line between skill and danger. Some performers gained regional fame. One 14th century Italian acrobat, known only as Zanobi, was said to perform on rooftops without safety nets, drawing crowds eager to witness his seemingly impossible stunts. These displays delighted audiences and offered a rare chance for common folk to experience thrill and wonder beyond their usual routines of labor and survival. Feasting was a central feature of festivals and fairs. Food vendors sold pies filled with meat or cheese, roasted meats skewered on spits, pastries scented with cinnamon and cloves, and fruits preserved in honey. Ale and mead flowed freely, and in some regions, local specialties became festival highlights. The English chronicler William of Malmesbury noted that fairs in Winchester often included elaborate banquets arranged by local guilds, with dishes served in symbolic displays designed to impress both diners and onlookers. Shared meals encouraged communal bonding, allowing peasants, merchants, and minor nobles to mingle in temporary equality under the banner of celebration. Despite the revelry, medieval festivals were not without their dangers and eccentricities. Some fairs were infamous for pickpockets, brawls, and occasionally even deadly accidents during horse races or mock battles. Still, these gatherings represented an essential outlet for communities living under the strictures of feudal law, taxation, and religious obligation. They offered moments of release, joy, and collective identity, creating memories that would be shared across generations. Some festivals were highly localized, tied to the feast days of patron saints. In Paris, the Feast of Saint Denis included processions, pageants, and competitive games. In England, the May Day celebrations involved dancing around the maypole, crowning a May Queen, and other rituals blending pagan and Christian traditions. These events connected participants to the rhythms of the natural and spiritual world, reminding them of cycles of sowing, harvest, and devotion, while also allowing for light-hearted escapism. Yet, the line between fun and folly was sometimes thin. The medieval penchant for exaggeration, grotesque humor, and physical comedy meant that even the most innocent amusements could verge on the absurd or dangerous. One English fair was said to feature a mock naval battle in a flooded square where participants paddled in small boats, pretending to wage war, a scene that surely delighted the crowd, but must have caused no small number of wet and muddied mishaps. Among the notable figures who contributed to medieval festivities was Eleanor of Aquitaine, Queen of both France and later England. Eleanor was known for her love of tournaments, feasts, and theatrical performances at court. She encouraged troubadours and poets to compose and perform, and her patronage helped shape a sophisticated culture of entertainment that rippled through the courts of Europe. Similarly, in Burgundy, Duke Philip the Good was famous for hosting extravagant tournaments and fêtes that showcased wealth, skill, and pageantry, leaving a lasting impression on visitors from across the continent. Festivals and fairs, whether in humble villages or grand cities, reveal a medieval world vibrant with creativity, humor, and resilience. In these moments, people found relief from labor, hardship, and the uncertainties of life. They laughed, competed, sang, and marveled, experiencing fleeting glimpses of joy in a world otherwise defined by struggle and survival. So tonight, as you settle under the comfort of your blanket and close your eyes, picture yourself wandering through a bustling, medieval fair. Hear the clamor of vendors, the music of minstrels, and the excited chatter of children. Imagine masked dancers twirling in the streets, knights demonstrating feats of skill, and commoners cheering at the antics of acrobats. Feel the warmth of fire-lit tents, the aroma of roasted meats and sweet pastries, and the contagious energy of communal celebration. Allow yourself to drift gently in the rhythms of laughter, pageantry, and revelry that marked the medieval calendar, knowing that even in the shadow of hardship, humanity found ways to celebrate life. As the last echoes of festival bells fade into memory, we step into the world of sound and performance, the entertainers who brought laughter, music, and storytelling to medieval life. Life in the Middle Ages was often harsh, with toil and danger shadowing every day, yet music and performance offered an ephemeral escape. A reminder that joy and amusement were still possible, even in the most austere of times. Tonight, we will wander through the courts of kings, the bustling taverns of towns, and the shadowed streets of villages, listening to the songs, stories, and antics that lifted hearts and stirred imaginations. At the center of noble courts, the jester held a unique place. Clad in motley, with bells jingling at his cap and shoes, the jester was both entertainer and social observer. Famous jesters such as Trebelet, who served King Louis VII of France, wielded humor with surprising sharpness. Trebelet was known not only for his clever puns and acrobatics, but also for daring to poke fun at the king himself, a risky endeavor that few could attempt. Jesters were granted this rare license to mock and jest, their humor serving both as entertainment and subtle critique, a mirror reflecting courtly life with all its pomp, vanity, and folly. Minstrels, too, were vital to the auditory landscape of the Middle Ages. Traveling musicians and poets, minstrels carried news, songs, and tales across regions, spreading stories of heroes, love, and mischief. Their instruments ranged from lutes and harps to fiddles and flutes, each sound conjuring visions of distant lands and epic adventures. Many minstrels, like the English performer William the Minstrel, earned the favor of nobility by weaving tales of chivalry and valor. One evening, they might sing of the legendary deeds of Roland at Charlemagne's court. Another, recount the daring exploits of Sir William Marshall, the champion of tournaments, captivating listeners with every note. Their performances were not merely for amusement. They reinforced cultural identity and preserved oral histories, keeping alive the myths and heroes of an era before printed books became widespread. Beyond the courts, minstrels and jesters also found audiences in taverns and town squares. Here, the music was raucous and lively, unrestrained by the formalities of noble halls. Peasants and townsfolk gathered, clapping, stomping, and singing along. Sometimes the performance bordered on the theatrical, with acrobatics, juggling, and mock battles. The traveling minstrel guilds competed for recognition, each vying to deliver the most engaging, humorous, or stirring show. Their livelihood depended not just on skill, but on the ability to captivate an audience, a challenge they embraced with energy and creativity. The role of the jester often extended beyond mere entertainment. Because of their wit, jesters could act as intermediaries in tense situations or advisors cloaked in humor. A clever quip could diffuse anger, criticize poor decisions, or illuminate hidden truths. Trebelet, for instance, was rumored to have used his performances to subtly influence royal decisions, though always under the protective veil of comedy. Similarly, in England, Will Sommers entertained King Henry VIII with stories and songs, his humor providing both laughter and counsel in a court famous for intrigue and danger. The power of jest, it seemed, lay not only in amusement, but in the freedom to speak truths that others could not dare voice. Music itself held therapeutic and spiritual power. The Gregorian chants echoing in cathedral halls contrasted sharply with the lively tunes of minstrels, yet both were central to medieval life. Music marked religious ceremonies, weddings, funerals, and seasonal festivals. It bridged the sacred and the secular, reminding all who heard it of beauty in a world often shadowed by suffering. For peasants, the simple joy of joining in song during village gatherings created bonds, lifted spirits, and forged a sense of shared identity. Even children were drawn into the rhythm of communal singing, learning melodies and dances passed down through generations. Of course, not all medieval entertainment was gentle. Some performances leaned toward the dangerous or grotesque, fire-eaters, acrobats, and performers of mock battles thrilled audiences with feats that would make modern spectators hold their breath. Traveling carnivals often incorporated these spectacles, providing both a thrill and a warning of life's unpredictability. And yet, even in such moments, laughter and awe prevailed, offering a temporary reprieve from the harsh realities of the medieval world. One cannot overlook the clever blend of storytelling and music that defined the traveling troubadours of southern France. Figures such as Bernard de Ventadorn, famed for his lyrical love songs, offered audiences lessons in courtly love, chivalry, and human emotion, wrapped in the elegance of melody. Their words and tunes shaped ideals of romance and valor, their influence echoing for centuries beyond the medieval period. They remind us that even in times of struggle, the human desire for beauty, connection, and expression remained strong. As we imagine the flickering torchlight of taverns, the rustle of silk in noble halls, and the rhythmic strum of lutes accompanying the laughter of jesters, we begin to appreciate the resilience of the human spirit. Entertainment was not mere frivolity, it was a vital balm for weary hearts, a bridge across class divides, and a vessel carrying the collective memory of an era. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your pillow and close your eyes, imagine the sounds of lutes, the jingling of bells, and the laughter of audiences long past. Picture tribalite bowing before the king, minstrels weaving tales of heroism, and children dancing in village squares, their voices lifting into the twilight. Let the music of merriment carry you gently into dreams, reminding you that even in the most challenging of times, joy, laughter, and beauty can endure. In the next chapter, we will explore another fascinating facet of medieval amusement: the games and sports that kept both nobles and commoners engaged, competitive, and occasionally injured in their quest for fun. But for now, allow the sounds of history to lull you into a peaceful slumber, where the echoes of minstrels and jesters mingle with the gentle rhythm of your breathing. As we drift further into the world of medieval leisure, we arrive at the lively, competitive, and sometimes perilous realm of games and jousts. For the nobles, these contests were more than mere amusement. They were opportunities to display skill, courage, and status. For commoners, games offered respite from toil, a chance to gather in community, and a spark of joy in lives often dictated by work and survival. Tonight, we shall wander through tournament fields, village greens, and bustling town squares to witness the contests that defined medieval play, where rivalry, skill, and spectacle intertwined in fascinating ways. Perhaps the most iconic symbol of medieval sport is the tournament. While modern audiences often imagine a polished spectacle of knights clashing for honor, tournaments in the Middle Ages were unpredictable, chaotic, and sometimes lethal. Emerging during the 12th century, these events began as mock battles among knights, evolving into more structured jousts over time. The joust, with its gleaming armor, long lances, and pounding hooves, was the centerpiece. Yet before a single lance was lowered, knights engaged in intricate preparations. Horses were groomed to perfection, armor checked and polished, until it gleamed like sunlight on steel, and heralds arranged banners to signify the noble houses competing that day. One legendary figure in the world of jousts was William Marshal. Known as the greatest knight of his era, born in 1146 as the youngest son of a minor noble family, William might have faded into obscurity if not for his extraordinary skill in tournaments. Over his lifetime, he is said to have competed in over 500 jousts, claiming victory in a remarkable number of them. Each triumph brought not only wealth and prestige, but also entry into the courts of kings, where his bravery and loyalty cemented his legendary status. To watch Marshal ride onto the tournament field was to witness grace and power in motion, a master of strategy, speed, and strength, inspiring awe in nobles and commoners alike. Tournaments were as much social events as athletic contests. Noble ladies, often adorned in flowing gowns and embroidered veils, watched from elevated pavilions, cheering their favored knights. Their applause could elevate a competitor's status, securing political alliances or drawing the attention of influential patrons. Children of the court watched wide-eyed, absorbing lessons of chivalry, courage, and etiquette that would guide them into adulthood. For the audience, the spectacle was a blend of excitement, danger, and pageantry, creating memories that would be recounted for years in songs and tales. Beyond the tournaments of the nobility, medieval towns and villages had their own games, simpler but no less engaging. Bowling, skittles, and early forms of dice games entertained people on feast days or during festivals. These games encouraged friendly competition and social bonding, while also testing skill, precision, and luck. Children, often starting as apprentices, would play games in open squares or along riverbanks, learning coordination and strategy while enjoying brief interludes of leisure. Village fairs became hubs of communal play, with games of chance, rudimentary board games, and contests of strength attracting crowds of eager participants. Archery was another key form of entertainment and skill building. Archery contests were popular across England and France, with young men and women alike testing their aim. For many, proficiency with a bow was a practical necessity linked to hunting or defense. Yet even outside necessity, hitting a target with precision brought immense satisfaction and social recognition. Archery tournaments were celebrated events, with prizes such as money, goods, or even the honor of being acknowledged as the finest archer in the region. Some contests became the stuff of legend, inspiring songs and poems for decades afterward. Games were not without their hazards. Tournament injuries were common, ranging from bruises and broken bones to fatal wounds. Even non-contact contests like archery could result in accidents if arrows veered off target. Yet the thrill of risk added to the allure. The medieval mindset embraced a complex relationship with danger to challenge oneself physically, to master skill, and to emerge victorious was a mark of character, resilience, and social worth. The interplay between competition and camaraderie extended to more playful pastimes as well. Mummers and performers often staged mock battles and games of wit, combining athleticism with theatricality. Festivals became stages for elaborate reenactments of legendary battles or mythical stories, with participants donning makeshift armor and wielding padded weapons. Villagers and nobles alike could enjoy the spectacle, cheering for heroes, jeering villains, and celebrating the art of performance, even within playful rivalry. These events reinforced social bonds, celebrated creativity, and provided an outlet for expression within the constraints of medieval life. In addition to the physical and theatrical contests, card and dice games offered intellectual challenge and strategic thinking. Games like tables, an early form of backgammon, were widely played in inns and taverns, often accompanied by friendly banter, wagers, and storytelling. Such games were less physically demanding, but equally engrossing, engaging participants in the pursuit of cunning, chance, and victory. They also allowed for relaxation after a day of labor, providing a mental reprieve and fostering social interaction among peers. Even the hunting grounds, discussed in previous chapters, often blended sport and entertainment. Noble hunts involved structured challenges, requiring both strategy and cooperation between hunters, horses, and hounds. Tracking a stag or wild boar demanded precision, patience, and skill. These hunts were ceremonial as much as practical, signaling status, wealth, and mastery of the natural world. The thrill of the chase, combined with social spectacle, created unforgettable experiences that were recounted around firesides, in feasts, and in songs long after the event had concluded. Thus, games and jests formed an essential part of medieval life. They offered a chance to test skill, celebrate bravery, foster social bonds, and experience joy in a world that could be unpredictable and unforgiving. Whether in the grandeur of a tournament field or the lively streets of a village fair, medieval people sought moments of pleasure, laughter, and competition, embracing the thrill of play as both pastime and art form. As you nestle deeper into your bed tonight, imagine the rhythmic clash of lances on polished armor, the cheers of a crowd, the light-hearted laughter of a village gathering, and the quiet concentration of a young archer aiming for the mark. Let these images, sounds, and sensations carry you gently into slumber, as the medieval world, with all its pageantry, play, and peril, unfolds quietly around you. In our next chapter, we will explore the fascinating realm of festivals, feasts, and the communal joys of medieval celebration, diving into the rituals, foods, and spectacles that made medieval life more colorful and memorable. As the rhythms of daily toil faded with the setting sun, medieval communities eagerly anticipated the moments when ordinary life gave way to celebration, when work paused and people gathered to revel, feast, and play. Festivals in the Middle Ages were far more than simple diversions. They were vital social occasions, binding communities together and offering a glimpse of joy and pageantry amidst lives often governed by hardship, labor, and the uncertainty of survival. From village greens to bustling town squares, the medieval calendar was punctuated by religious, seasonal, and civic festivals, each a kaleidoscope of color, sound, and human spirit. The Christian calendar provided the framework for much of the medieval festival life. Saints' days, holy feasts, and church holidays transformed towns and villages into spaces of communal energy and festivity. Christmas, Easter, and All Saints' Day were marked by elaborate church services, but also by feasting, singing, and social gatherings. Villagers would decorate homes with greenery, light candles to honor the season, and prepare special foods, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. Bells rang through villages, announcing the sacred occasion, while the scent of spiced bread, roasted meats, and pies filled the air. One of the most exuberant festivals was Carnival, held in the days before Lent. This was a time when social norms loosened, allowing peasants, artisans, and even some nobles to partake in playful mischief. Masked dances, parades, and theatrical performances blurred the boundaries between social classes, if only briefly. Costumes were colorful and imaginative, ranging from animal disguises to representations of devils and saints, inviting laughter and wonder. Villagers would sometimes mock their lords, and the clergy in jest, a fleeting inversion of social hierarchies that brought a sense of relief and release. The medieval fairs and market days also became hubs of amusement. While the primary purpose was commerce, these gatherings offered entertainment, from juggling performers to acrobats and minstrels. Crowds of peasants and townsfolk would watch, laugh, and marvel as performers displayed daring feats, sometimes accompanied by storytelling or impromptu drama. Children darted between stalls, sampling sweets or engaging in games of chance, while adults might test their skills at archery, dice, or other playful contests. Some fairs were celebrated with special tournaments or mock battles, allowing both nobles and townspeople to witness spectacle while participating in a shared cultural experience. Among the nobility, festivals were both social and political events, blending ceremony, leisure, and the display of wealth and influence. A grand feast in a castle hall might include tables groaning with roasted meats, pies, pastries, and exotic delicacies. The Duke of Burgundy, Charles the Bold, for example, was known for hosting lavish feasts that drew visitors from across Europe, offering both sustenance and a stage for social maneuvering. Guests were entertained by jesters, musicians, and dancers, while the walls were adorned with tapestries depicting heroic deeds and allegorical tales. the careful choreography of seating arrangements, toasts and gift-giving reinforced hierarchy, alliance, and status. Even the humblest villages celebrated with creativity. A harvest festival, for instance, marked the culmination of months of labor, offering gratitude for sustenance and a chance to rest. Villagers would bring produce, grains, and livestock to display, while others prepared pies, breads, and puddings for communal enjoyment. Dancing around maypoles, singing folk songs, and performing simple plays reflected the collective joy of survival and accomplishment. Children often participated in mock battles or races, while adults engaged in storytelling contests, jokes, and playful competitions. These occasions allowed communities to bond, share humor, and celebrate resilience. Music and dance played central roles in both noble and common festivities. Minstrels traveled from town to town, performing songs of heroism, romance, and humor. Lutes, harps, fiddles, and flutes provided melodies, while drums and horns marked rhythm and excitement. Dancing often combined communal joy with subtle instruction in etiquette or strategy. The steps and formations of courtly dances reflected both grace and hierarchy. Even peasant dances were lively, emphasizing community and shared enjoyment, often performed in circles or lines, accompanied by singing and clapping. Games also featured heavily in festival culture. Competitions in wrestling, archery, and running races allowed participants to test strength, endurance, and skill, sometimes with prizes of money, food, or symbolic tokens. Noble tournaments occasionally coincided with festival days, creating spectacular public displays that fused pageantry with sport. Watching a knight on horseback strike an opponent's shield with a lance was thrilling, as was witnessing a particularly clever trick by a traveling juggler. Every act, whether competitive, performative, or whimsical, contributed to the collective excitement and memory of the festival. Food was central to festival life, providing both sustenance and indulgence. While daily meals might be modest, festivals offered rare abundance. Roasted meats, baked pies, cheeses, and ale or wine filled tables. Seasonal fruits and honeyed desserts were prized, and presentation mattered as much as flavor. Feasts were both celebration and statement, a display of wealth, generosity, and social cohesion. The act of eating together reinforced community ties, while the extravagance of certain dishes elevated the event into something nearly theatrical. Religious observance intertwined seamlessly with celebration. Many festivals honored saints or biblical events, blending devotion with amusement. Pageants depicted religious stories, often performed by townspeople themselves, sometimes humorously, sometimes reverently. These performances educated, entertained, and allowed ordinary people to engage creatively with spiritual teachings. Even in jest, the stories reinforced cultural values, connecting participants with faith, history, and one another. In this world of medieval festivals and feasts, we see the resilience of human spirit. Amid hardship, labor, and uncertainty, people carved out moments of joy, creativity, and connection. Nobles and peasants alike participated in rituals that combined play, ceremony, and social expression. Music, dance, games, and food provided relief from daily burdens, while festivals reinforced community bonds and celebrated shared culture. As you settle further into your pillow tonight, imagine the flickering torchlight illuminating a crowded village green, the rhythmic beat of drums, the laughter of children, the flourish of a minstrel's song. Picture the aromas of roasted meats mingling with sweet pastries, and the thrill of a tournament or dance performed for an eager audience. Let the sights, sounds, and warmth of medieval festivals carry you gently into a serene slumber, where centuries of human joy and ingenuity mingle in your dreams. In the next chapter, we will explore the curious world of medieval superstitions, magic, and the beliefs that shaped both fun and fear in daily life, uncovering the hidden patterns behind the games, rituals, and stories of the past. In medieval Europe, the line between everyday life and the supernatural was thin, often imperceptible. Superstitions, folk beliefs, and a fascination with magic shaped the way people understood their world, influenced their choices, and even dictated their entertainment. From peasants in the countryside to nobles in opulent castles, the medieval mind was steeped in the unseen forces of fate, divine will, and mystical intervention. Life was uncertain, and superstition offered a sense of control, a framework for making sense of the unpredictable events that surrounded them. For ordinary villagers, omens, charms, and ritual observances were essential parts of daily life. A black cat crossing one's path might portend misfortune, while finding a four-leaf clover was a sign of rare good luck. Farmers often performed small rituals before sowing seeds or tending livestock, whispering prayers or tying protective charms to barns and plows to safeguard crops and animals. One such charm, the hagstone, a naturally hold stone believed to ward off witches, was often hung above doorways or worn as an amulet. Children were cautioned not to whistle at night, lest spirits be drawn to the sound, and mirrors were sometimes covered during storms to prevent evil from passing through reflections. Magic was not just superstition. It was a practical tool in some cases, especially for women known as midwives, herbalists, or wise women. These women combined folk remedies, herbal knowledge, and ritual practices to heal, protect, and comfort their communities. For example, a midwife might chant protective verses during childbirth, use certain herbs to ease labor, or perform symbolic gestures to ward off spirits. Their knowledge was invaluable, yet it also made them vulnerable. Should misfortune strike her, a crop fail, a child fall ill, these same women could be accused of witchcraft, demonstrating the fragile boundary between revered wisdom and fearful suspicion. Even the nobility engaged with superstitions, albeit in a more ritualized and symbolic manner. Knights and lords often carried talismanic objects, consulted astrologers, or observed the alignment of the stars before battle. Royal courts sometimes employed learned magicians, philosophers, or scholars to interpret omens, predict outcomes, or advise on matters both political and personal. A noble might refuse to sign a treaty, travel, or fight a duel if a certain celestial event was deemed inauspicious. Superstition intersected with strategy and politics in ways that seem both charming and peculiar to the modern mind. Festivals and entertainment were not immune to these mystical influences. Fortune telling, divination, and ritual games were common forms of amusement. During carnival or feast days, peasants and nobles alike might consult fortune tellers using cards, bones, or runes. Children played games that echoed superstitious beliefs, such as tossing stones over the shoulder to avoid bad luck, or hiding small tokens to attract prosperity. Even storytelling often incorporated magical themes, tales of fairies, spirits, enchanted forests, and heroic figures battling witches or sorcerers captivated audiences, blending moral lessons with excitement and mystery. Witchcraft, a darker manifestation of supernatural belief, loomed over the Middle Ages. While popular imagination often emphasizes the dramatic witch trials of the late medieval and early modern periods, the seeds were planted much earlier. Women and men accused of consorting with spirits, practicing harmful magic, or possessing forbidden knowledge faced suspicion, ostracization, or worse. These fears permeated social life, influencing how people behaved and how they interacted with one another. A poorly executed spell, an unusual physical trait, or even a sarcastic remark could provoke fear and suspicion, demonstrating how entwined magic, morality, and community were. Astrology and the alignment of stars and planets were also taken seriously. Scholars and laypeople believed celestial movements could dictate success in harvests, battles, marriages, and health. Astrologers would calculate horoscopes for kings, noble families, and even commoners seeking guidance. The rise of astrology books, charts, and manuals reflected both genuine study and a desire to predict and influence outcomes beyond human control. Even knights entering tournaments might seek astrological advice to ensure victory or avoid injury. Blending chivalric ambition with cosmic superstition, animals were often imbued with magical significance. A raven might foretell death. A hare crossing a path could signal good luck. A cat might be either a beloved companion or a witch's familiar. The medieval imagination read messages in the natural world, assigning meaning to patterns, coincidences, and anomalies. These beliefs were not idle curiosities. They influenced decisions in agriculture, travel, and personal safety. People navigated life with both caution and wonder, seeking harmony with forces they could not fully comprehend. Religious practice intertwined with superstition and magic, creating a rich tapestry of ritual life. Pilgrimages to holy sites promised protection and healing, while touching relics, reciting prayers, or lighting candles could safeguard one from misfortune. Saints were invoked for specific purposes. Saint Apollonia against toothaches, Saint Christopher for travelers, Saint Nicholas for children. Church festivals often blended sacred observance with folk practices, resulting in colorful, lively events where faith, superstition, and celebration mingled seamlessly. In many ways, superstitions and magical beliefs served as a form of entertainment as well as a coping mechanism. Storytellers wove magical tales into performances, jesters used supernatural motifs to amuse audiences, and games incorporated mystical symbols. Even the fear of the unknown could be thrilling, transforming danger into a form of narrative excitement. People were drawn to the mysterious, the unseen, and the dramatic, creating a culture where magic and superstition were woven into the very fabric of daily life. So, as you close your eyes tonight, imagine walking through a medieval village on a misty evening. Candles flicker in windows, casting shadows on cobblestones. A wise woman murmurs protective words as she hangs herbs from a doorway. Children giggle while tossing stones or imitating the gestures of fortune tellers. Minstrels sing songs of enchanted forests, knights, and mystical creatures. You can feel the hum of belief and wonder in the air, the ever-present sense that something unseen guides, protects, or challenges every action. Let this world of magic and superstition carry you gently into dreams, a realm where imagination and history intertwine, where the mysteries of the past whisper softly, urging you to rest. In the next chapter, we will wander into the world of medieval games and pastimes, where children and adults alike found joy, amusement, and skill, testing challenges in a time long before modern toys and entertainment. In medieval Europe, life was often harsh, unpredictable, and grueling. Most people labored from sunrise to sunset, tending fields, managing livestock, or performing domestic chores. Yet, even in the midst of such toil, both nobles and commoners found ways to escape, to laugh, to compete, and to delight in games and pastimes. The Middle Ages may seem distant and austere to us today, but the human desire for amusement and recreation has always been present, and medieval people were remarkably inventive in finding joy amid hardship. For the children of peasants, entertainment was simple, improvisational, and often intertwined with daily life. They would fashion dolls from rags, carved wood, or clay, creating companions that were surprisingly sophisticated for their time. Boys often crafted miniature weapons and shields from scraps of wood or leather, engaging in mock battles in fields or village greens. These games, though playful, also functioned as informal training for the responsibilities and skills they would need as adults. Girls, meanwhile, practiced sewing, embroidery, and other domestic arts as part of their daily routine. But these tasks could be transformed into playful competitions or storytelling exercises. For example, a group of girls might challenge each other to weave a pattern faster or invent a new song while embroidering. In this way, even labor carried a subtle element of play. The fairgrounds and festivals of medieval towns offered children and adults alike a broader palette of amusement. Annual fairs were eagerly anticipated, bringing a mix of performances, contests, and displays from near and far. Jugglers, acrobats, magicians, and minstrels performed to enthusiastic crowds. A peasant family might save a portion of their meager earnings for entry into the fair, where children could watch daring feats, spin wooden tops, or attempt small games of skill to win tokens or prizes. Such events provided a much-needed break from routine, a momentary taste of excitement and wonder in lives otherwise dominated by necessity. Board games were widely popular across social classes, though the versions varied. Chess, a game introduced from the Arab world, became a favorite pastime for nobles. It was not merely entertainment. It was a demonstration of strategy, intelligence, and foresight, qualities prized in a society structured around warfare and feudal obligations. Chess sets were often beautifully crafted, with intricately carved pieces representing kings, queens, knights, and pawns. Playing the game was both a social activity and a subtle means of education, teaching noble youth how to anticipate consequences and navigate complex scenarios. For those of more modest means, simpler games were enjoyed. Nine Men's Morris, known in various regions by slightly different names, involved moving pebbles or small pieces across a carved board with the goal of forming mills or rows of three. Children could carve these boards into wood, stone, or even dirt, making the game accessible to many. Another popular pastime was skittles, a rudimentary form of bowling where wooden pins were knocked down using a small ball. Both games required skill, patience, and a sense of timing, offering moments of satisfaction and achievement in an otherwise demanding world. Physical games and sports were also integral to medieval life. Archery was both a necessary skill and a form of recreation. Archery competitions were held for youth and adults alike, sometimes with prizes or small monetary rewards. Peasant boys practiced with bows made from local yew or ash, while knights honed their abilities with the more refined longbows or crossbows. Jousting, as we explored earlier, was a spectacularly dangerous sport for the nobility. Yet simpler martial games allowed the young and less experienced to experience the thrill of competition. Wrestling, mock sword fights, and running races were common, often accompanied by music, cheering, and laughter from gathered spectators. Parlor games offered another form of amusement, especially during long winter evenings when outdoor activity was limited. These included riddles, storytelling contests, and improvisational poetry, where participants tried to outwit each other with clever language and humor. Such activities were popular in noble households and monasteries alike, fostering mental agility, memory, and social bonding. Card games began to appear toward the later medieval period, though these were initially rare and mostly enjoyed by the upper classes due to the cost of the cards. Medieval festivals and religious holidays were also marked by games that blurred the line between entertainment and ritual. During midsummer celebrations, villagers might participate in playful competitions such as sack races, tug of war, or mock combat with padded weapons, masks, costumes. And pageantry transformed these events into spectacles, where social hierarchies were momentarily suspended. Carnival, preceding the austerity of Lent, was a time for mockery, role reversal, and humorous parades. A poor villager might mock a nobleman with a clever performance, and children might dress as tiny adults to join in the revelry. These occasions combined humor, competition, and cultural performance in a way that united entire communities. Music and dance were central to many games and pastimes. Instruments such as lutes, flutes, and drums accompanied group dances, while songs accompanied competitive or cooperative games. Children might form circles or lines, chanting rhymes while moving in coordinated steps. Adults, too, enjoyed country dances and courtly dances, with intricate patterns that required skill, attention, and cooperation. Dancing served as both physical exercise and a social ritual, reinforcing bonds between neighbors, friends, and family. Even solitary amusements had their place. Many people enjoyed puzzles, riddles, and storytelling as personal diversion. Monks and nuns sometimes wrote and shared clever riddles as intellectual challenges, while traveling minstrels entertained passers-by with dramatic retellings of legends and fairy tales. The stories themselves often contained moral lessons, heroic exploits, or humor, blending education, amusement, and imagination. Through all these games and pastimes, one finds a remarkable thread, human ingenuity in seeking joy amidst struggle. Medieval people, whether peasants or nobles, children or adults, found ways to play, compete, and celebrate, even when life demanded constant labor and vigilance. The methods might differ, the equipment might be rudimentary, but the intent was universal: a desire to engage, to laugh, to learn, and to connect. So, as you drift into sleep tonight, imagine the village green alive with laughter, the fairground bustling with games, the knights practicing archery, and children spinning tops and dolls. Hear the rhythm of drums and flutes, the cheers of crowds, the whispers of strategy in a game of chess. Feel the gentle satisfaction of victory in a small competition, or the joy of joining a dance with friends. Let the sounds, colors, and simple pleasures of medieval pastimes carry you into dreams, a world where play, skill, and imagination thrived even in the shadow of hardship. In the next chapter, we will step into the feasts, banquets, and culinary wonders of the Middle Ages, exploring the flavors, traditions, and social rituals surrounding medieval dining. In medieval times, food was more than mere sustenance. It was a reflection of status, culture, and occasion. From the humblest peasant to the most exalted noble, meals carried social, symbolic, and even political weight. Yet, despite the hierarchy and strict codes that governed life in the Middle Ages, one thing was universal: people loved to eat, and they loved to celebrate through food. Feasts and banquets were occasions where life's pleasures could be savored, where stories were told, alliances were forged, and the rhythms of medieval society were momentarily set aside in favor of indulgence, camaraderie, and spectacle. The peasant table was simple and functional. Most villagers ate 2 meals a day, a modest breakfast of bread and ale or porridge, followed by a heavier midday meal that might include bread, cheese, pottage, or occasionally meat if luck and resources allowed. Pottage, a thick, hearty stew made from vegetables, grains, and sometimes small game, was a staple. Simmered over an open hearth in a communal kitchen. Meals were eaten from wooden bowls or trenchers, flat pieces of stale bread that doubled as plates. Sharing food was common, as was eating with one's hands, though etiquette gradually encouraged the use of knives and spoons. For peasants, mealtime was a chance to rest, share news, and enjoy modest pleasures in a life dominated by labor. For the nobility, however, meals were an entirely different spectacle. Banquets were often grand affairs, carefully orchestrated to display wealth, power, and sophistication. Tables were long and laden with dishes of meat, fish, and poultry, sometimes exotic and imported from distant lands. Game such as venison, boar, and rabbit was common, while nobles also enjoyed swan, peacock, and other birds presented with elaborate garnishes. Spices, pepper, saffron, cloves, and cinnamon added flavor and prestige, as they were rare and expensive imports from the East. The presentation of dishes was as important as the taste. Cooks prided themselves on visually stunning arrangements, from roasted animals posed to mimic lifelike stances to pastries shaped into intricate patterns or symbolic forms. Music, storytelling, and entertainment often accompanied noble meals. Minstrels, troubadours, and jesters performed between courses, providing rhythm, humor, and delight. Guests might witness swordplay exhibitions, acrobatic stunts, or poetic recitations. Conversation flowed, with nobles exchanging news, gossip, and political insight, while carefully navigating the etiquette of hierarchy and deference. A successful banquet was a combination of taste, spectacle, and social diplomacy. The organization of a feast was itself a display of order and hierarchy. Servants and pages bustled throughout the hall, ensuring that dishes were replenished, goblets refilled, and guests attended to promptly. Some large households employed dozens of kitchen staff, including specialized roles such as pastry chefs, sauce masters, and carvers who expertly sliced roast meats for the table. The chief cook, often the most skilled and respected of the kitchen staff, directed this orchestration, ensuring that every dish was presented at the right time and at the correct temperature. During a banquet, guests were seated according to rank, with the lord or lady at the high table, a position of honor that allowed all present to witness their authority. Around the hall, other tables accommodated knights, retainers, and esteemed visitors. Seating arrangements were a matter of careful planning, reflecting social hierarchies, political alliances, and even marital connections. The high table was not just for dining. It was a stage from which the host could assert dominance, display generosity, and impress all who looked upon them. While meat dominated noble tables, bread remained central to every meal. White bread, made from fine wheat flour, was reserved for the wealthy, while darker, coarser loaves were consumed by commoners. Ale or wine accompanied meals, often consumed in generous quantities. Drinking was not only for refreshment, it symbolized conviviality, celebration, and in some contexts, ritual or oath-taking. Wine barrels might be tapped for festivals, while alehouses and taverns provided more casual opportunities for communal drinking and merrymaking. Some banquets were linked to religious occasions or civic celebrations, such as saints' days, royal visits, or local fairs. Lenten meals, in contrast, followed strict fasting rules, often eliminating meat and emphasizing fish, grains, and vegetables. Yet even these simpler meals could be occasions for subtle creativity, as cooks devised recipes that were both compliant with religious law and pleasing to the palate. Food also had symbolic meaning. Certain dishes were served to reflect status, honor guests, or demonstrate knowledge of culinary trends. The use of spices, for example, was not merely gustatory, it was a signal of wealth and worldly connection. Exotic ingredients like sugar, saffron, and cinnamon signified sophistication, and were sometimes used in elaborate displays to impress visitors and rivals alike. Similarly, large, ornate pies might contain surprise ingredients, birds nested within pastries or meats, hidden beneath layers of dough, demonstrating both the cook's skill and the host's generosity. For children, feasts were a time of wonder. Boys and girls from noble households watched minstrels, tried small games, and sampled the less dangerous treats laid out on platters. Even among peasants, festivals offered rare indulgences, from sweetened bread to honeyed cakes or roasted nuts. Food, then, was both sustenance and delight, a way to connect people across ages and social strata. Feasts could also be dangerous, in a way. Without modern preservation methods, meat and fish spoiled quickly, and improper preparation could lead to illness. Yet the risk did not diminish the joy. Banquets were anticipated for weeks, with preparations, recipes, and ingredients carefully planned. They were, in essence, a temporary escape from daily concerns, a chance to savor abundance, show artistry, and enjoy camaraderie. In the quieter moments after the meal, when plates had been cleared and goblets drained, stories and legends often filled the hall. Tales of heroic knights, cunning tricksters, and wondrous creatures were recounted, sometimes accompanied by music or acting. Feasts, therefore, were not merely for eating. They were for experiencing the richness of medieval culture, bonding with community, and indulging in imagination. As you drift into sleep tonight, imagine the flickering candlelight of a grand hall, the scent of roasted meats and fragrant spices, the murmur of conversation, the laughter of children, and the soft melodies of lutes and flutes. Picture the careful arrangement of dishes, the gleam of polished goblets, and the proud posture of a host presiding over a banquet. Let the rhythm of preparation, presentation, and indulgence carry you into dreams, a world where food, fellowship, and festivity intertwine to create comfort, joy, and wonder. In the next chapter, we will explore medieval music, songs, and the art of storytelling, discovering how sound and narrative transported people into realms of imagination, reflection, and delight. In the medieval world, music and storytelling were far more than simple entertainment. They were lifelines to culture, history, and emotion. Across villages, castles, and courts, people turned to music, ballads, and tales to educate, amuse, and inspire. From the simple rhythms of a peasant's drum to the intricate harmonies of a courtly lute, melodies shaped moods, brought communities together, and offered a gentle refuge from the hardships of daily life. Even today, as we close our eyes and imagine the medieval past, we can almost hear the faint echo of strings, flutes, and voices carried across sunlit fields and echoing halls. Among peasants, music was a communal, participatory affair. Work songs accompanied long hours in the fields, helping rhythmically pace labor and lighten spirits. A line of reapers might chant together, their voices rising and falling in time with the scythe, while bakers or millers hummed tunes as they kneaded dough or ground grain. Seasonal festivals provided the perfect opportunity for dancing, accompanied by fiddles, flutes, and simple drums. The melodies were often repetitive, making them easy to learn and pass along, ensuring that even children could join in. In quiet moments, families sang lullabies or folk ballads, passing down oral histories, moral lessons, and tales of heroism or folly from one generation to the next. In noble households, music and storytelling reached levels of refinement and complexity. Minstrels, troubadours, and jongleurs traveled from court to court, their repertoire spanning songs of chivalry, love, and epic battles. Minstrels often accompanied themselves with lutes, harps, or lyres, while jongleurs added theatrical flair, performing acrobatics or juggling alongside their tunes. Troubadours, particularly in southern France, composed lyrical poetry that celebrated courtly love, courage, and virtue, often performing for the most influential patrons of the day. These performances were not just entertainment. They were political tools, signaling sophistication loyalty, and refinement. One cannot discuss medieval music without acknowledging the Church's influence. Gregorian chants, with their soaring, meditative tones, echoed through stone cathedrals, lifting the soul and inspiring reflection. Monks, nuns, and clerics meticulously preserved these melodies. Combining devotion with precision, sacred music created a calming rhythm that punctuated the lives of both the clergy and the faithful, offering a spiritual counterpart to the secular songs of peasants and nobles alike. Storytelling, closely intertwined with music, was another cherished art. Tales of legendary heroes, saints, and fantastical creatures captivated listeners of all ages. Bards roamed from village to village, often accompanying themselves with small instruments, weaving narrative and melody into a seamless performance. Their stories were not only entertaining, they educated audiences about morality, history, and the deeds of ancestors. Ballads like the Tale of Robin Hood or the exploits of Charlemagne carried lessons of bravery, justice, and cunning, ensuring that the deeds of the past lived on through song. Even in noble courts, storytelling was a social instrument. During long winters, guests gathered around roaring hearths to hear epic tales or comical anecdotes. Kings and queens, knights and ladies, and visiting dignitaries alike delighted in stories that showcased valor, cleverness, or moral consequence. Storytelling sessions fostered intimacy, conversation, and reflection, while the best performers were often rewarded handsomely for their skill and wit. Musical instruments themselves tell a fascinating story. The lute was beloved among nobles for its melodic versatility, while the harp brought elegance to both sacred and secular spaces. Drums and tambourines punctuated dances, and flutes, pipes, and fiddles filled village squares with lively tunes. Even simple instruments like the Jew's harp or hurdy-gurdy found their place in the daily soundscape, creating a musical rhythm that accompanied work, play, and ritual. Each instrument reflected a distinct social stratum, cultural origin, or personal preference, creating a rich tapestry of sound that echoed across medieval Europe. Songs were sometimes used to commemorate significant events, victories in battle, royal coronations, or successful hunts were immortalized in verse, with singers traveling far and wide to ensure that the deeds were known. Similarly, songs of lament chronicled disasters, famines, and tragedies, offering both comfort and communal mourning. Music, in its many forms, was a bridge between joy and sorrow, life and death, the sacred and the everyday. Dancing was inseparable from music. Peasant dances were lively, often circular or chain formations, encouraging participation and fostering a sense of community. Courtly dances were highly stylized, with intricate steps, bows, and gestures reflecting elegance, etiquette, and social standing. Dance provided physical relief, social interaction, and a canvas for expression, reinforcing bonds within communities, while also signaling wealth and refinement among the elite. For children, music and storytelling were windows into wonder. Folk songs, fables, and rhymes taught lessons, captured imagination, and offered gentle reassurance in a world that could otherwise be harsh and unpredictable. They learned that life, while sometimes challenging, could be enriched through creativity, imagination, and shared experience. Even lullabies, softly sung at the end of a long day, carried echoes of cultural memory and familial love, linking one generation to the next. So tonight, as you settle into your own bed and close your eyes, imagine a medieval village at dusk. Hear the strains of a fiddle from a distant square, the laughter of children running after a ball, and the deep, resonant chant of monks from a nearby abbey. Picture a noble hall, with lute music drifting across polished stone floors, minstrels performing for an enthralled audience, and tales of knights and dragons filling the air with wonder. Let these sounds, imagined and timeless, lull you into a gentle, reflective slumber, a place where history, imagination, and serenity intertwine. Music, songs, and storytelling were more than diversions in the Middle Ages. They were lifelines to joy, knowledge, and connection. They allowed people to transcend their daily burdens, celebrate their accomplishments, and preserve their collective memory. As you drift into dreams tonight, carry with you the echoes of flutes, harps, drums, and voices from centuries past, a serene reminder of humanity's enduring need for rhythm, narrative, and wonder. In the next chapter, we will explore medieval games and pastimes, from board games to outdoor sports, and discover how people of all classes found joy, challenge, and camaraderie in play. In medieval times, life was often a daily struggle against hunger, disease, and harsh labor. Yet people of all classes found ways to play, compete, and enjoy moments of leisure. Games and pastimes offered brief respite from the unrelenting demands of the Middle Ages, providing both entertainment and social cohesion. Whether in the courts of kings or the fields of peasants, medieval people embraced activities that ranged from skillful competitions to simple diversions, creating memories and bonds that transcended social rank. Among the peasantry, games were often outdoors, improvised, and communal. Children played with whatever they could find. Sticks became swords, stones served as dice, and homemade balls were kicked or thrown. One popular activity was mob football, a chaotic precursor to modern soccer. Entire villages could take part, playing with few rules and often spanning fields, lanes, and streams. Matches could last hours or even days, with teams formed spontaneously from whoever was available. While rough and unpredictable, these games offered excitement, exercise, and camaraderie. Another simple yet popular game was hoop rolling, in which players used sticks to propel wooden hoops along a path or street. This seemingly innocent pastime was deceptively challenging, requiring dexterity, speed, and persistence. Children and adults alike found joy in the friendly competitions, often turning ordinary streets into vibrant arenas. Other playground activities included jumping contests, tag-like chases, and simple juggling using pebbles or balls of yarn. These games were not only fun, but also served as informal training, honing coordination, strategy, and endurance. Peasants and villagers also enjoyed board games and dice games, which could be played indoors during colder months or in crowded taverns. Nine Men's Morris, a strategic game played on etched boards, tested tactical thinking and planning. Players moved pieces to create lines of three, attempting to block and capture the opponent's tokens. Tables, a game resembling modern backgammon, combined luck with strategy, as players rolled dice to advance their pieces around a board in a contest of both skill and fortune. These games provided intellectual stimulation, competition, and social interaction, offering an important break from the hardships of agrarian life. For nobles and royalty, games were more elaborate and often designed to demonstrate skill, sophistication, and status. Chess, introduced from the Islamic world, was particularly prized. It was a game of strategy and foresight, where pieces representing kings, queens, knights, and bishops battled in an abstract representation of courtly power and war. Nobles not only played for leisure, but also for prestige, often hosting chess matches that served as subtle contests of wit, intelligence, and political acumen. The game became a favorite pastime for both men and women, offering mental exercise and social engagement. Physical contests among the nobility were equally important. Jousting and tournaments, which we explored in previous chapters, combined entertainment, status, and training. But beyond these spectacles, Nobles engaged in more personal games of skill. Archery competitions, for instance, were both recreational and practical, reinforcing the abilities needed for hunting and war. Hawking and falconry, as previously described, were as much a sport as a status symbol, demanding patience, strategy, and coordination between human and bird. These pursuits were both thrilling and dangerous, offering adrenaline-fueled enjoyment alongside social prestige. Dice and card games were common across classes. Dice were cheap and easy to craft, making them accessible to peasants and nobles alike. Popular games often involved wagers, adding excitement and risk to the pastime. Cards arrived in Europe in the late Middle Ages and quickly became popular among both elite and middle-class circles. Early card games varied by region, but shared the common themes of chance, strategy, and social engagement. Many nobles enjoyed gambling, often using gold or valuable trinkets as stakes, turning ordinary afternoons into high-stakes entertainment. Music and storytelling often accompanied games, enhancing the experience. In peasant villages, competitions might be interspersed with songs, dancing, or storytelling, creating a lively atmosphere where community bonds were strengthened. In noble courts, chess matches or dice games were punctuated with minstrels' performances or the presence of a witty jester, ensuring that even quiet games were part of a larger cultural display. Play was never purely isolated. It was deeply connected to social life, ritual, and entertainment. Hello and welcome, dear listeners. If you're enjoying these videos, hit us like and do subscribe. It helps us more than you think. Outdoor festivals, particularly during holy days and seasonal celebrations, showcased a variety of pastimes. Fairs and markets offered archery contests, tug-of-war competitions, and mock battles for both participants and spectators. These events were lively, colorful, and communal, giving everyone, from nobles to artisans and peasants, a chance to relax, demonstrate skill, and engage in friendly rivalry. Carnival days before Lent were particularly festive, featuring games, theatrical performances, music, and dancing. For a brief period, societal hierarchies were relaxed, and even the most rigid feudal obligations could be set aside in the pursuit of merriment. Board games, outdoor sports, and festivals also played a practical role. They developed agility, coordination, strategic thinking, and teamwork, which could be valuable for labor, defense, or military training. Children learned patience, focus, and social norms through play, while adults reinforced alliances, camaraderie, and personal reputation. In this way, games were not frivolous, but intertwined with survival, social cohesion, and education, creating subtle lessons that endured across generations. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of medieval pastimes was their creative improvisation. People adapted to their surroundings, resources, and social context, finding joy and amusement even in the harshest conditions. A stick could become a sword, a stone a dice, a patch of dirt a playing field. This resilience and ingenuity remind us that the human desire for fun, competition, and connection transcends time, class, and circumstance. As you imagine the medieval past tonight, picture village children rolling hoops along dusty lanes, peasants challenging each other at nine men's morris, knights testing their aim at the archery range, and nobles quietly strategizing over a game of chess. Hear the laughter, the cheering, the rhythmic pounding of feet and sticks, and let the energy and joy of these long-ago pastimes carry you gently into your dreams. Games and pastimes in the Middle Ages were more than entertainment. They were windows into the culture, creativity, and resilience of people who lived centuries before us. From humble peasant amusements to noble pursuits of strategy and skill, they allowed individuals to escape the hardships of life, connect with others, and celebrate moments of triumph, skill, and shared delight. In the next chapter, we will explore medieval festivals and celebrations, diving into the sights, sounds, and emotions of feasts, fairs, and communal revelries that punctuated the rhythms of the year. In the rigidly structured world of the Middle Ages, few things offered the same sense of release and communal joy as festivals and celebrations. Life for both peasants and nobles was dictated by work, hierarchy, and survival, yet the medieval calendar was punctuated by holy days, saints' days, and seasonal festivals that transformed towns, villages, and castles into vibrant hubs of activity. These events were as much about social connection as they were about leisure, providing opportunities for feasting, entertainment, and ritual observance, where the entire community could participate in a collective escape from the routine of everyday life. For the peasantry, festivals were eagerly anticipated and deeply cherished. They provided a chance to take a break from the fields, forges, and domestic labor, and offered rare moments of laughter, music, and dancing. May Day, celebrated at the beginning of May, was one of the liveliest of these festivals. Villagers adorned themselves with flowers and greenery, danced around the maypole, and engaged in singing competitions or playful mock battles. Children and adults alike reveled in the opportunity to express joy and creativity, often donning masks, costumes, or colorful ribbons to enhance the spectacle. The air would have been thick with excitement, music, and the scent of spring flowers, as ordinary life gave way to revelry. Harvest festivals in the autumn were another high point for common folk. After months of toil in the fields, communities came together to give thanks, celebrate the bounty, and strengthen bonds between families and neighbors. Feasts were central to these celebrations, featuring bread, roasted meats, pies, cheeses, and cider. Even peasants who struggled with scarcity during the year could enjoy a special meal, often accompanied by songs, storytelling, and games. Local musicians would play flutes, fiddles, and drums, while dancers performed in circles or lines, demonstrating steps that had been passed down for generations. These festivals reinforced identity, tradition, and communal spirit, reminding villagers that their labor was part of a larger rhythm of life. Religious festivals intertwined devotion with entertainment, blurring the lines between the sacred and the secular. Saints' days, for instance, were celebrated with processions, mass, and sometimes dramatic pageants depicting biblical stories or the lives of saints. Townspeople would gather in the churchyard, their eyes drawn to actors wearing costumes and performing stories with exaggerated gestures, humor, and music. The festivals provided both education and amusement, embedding moral and religious lessons into lively, memorable spectacles. Candlelit processions, singing, and the ringing of bells marked these celebrations, filling the village with sound, movement, and communal reverence. Carnival, the period preceding Lent, was particularly notable for its subversive energy. For a brief few days, social hierarchies could be relaxed, and the ordinary order of life turned upside down. Nobles and peasants alike might engage in jesting, parades, and masquerades. People wore masks to conceal their identities, allowing them to behave in ways that would normally be forbidden. Mischief, playful insults, and gentle mockery of authority were tolerated, offering a cathartic release from the rigid structures of feudal life. Food and drink flowed freely, games were played, and the air buzzed with laughter. Carnival was a fleeting window into a world where the usual rules of behavior were suspended, leaving participants exhilarated and refreshed before returning to daily life. Among the nobility, festivals were grander, often serving both celebratory and political purposes. Coronations, weddings, and royal entries were occasions for elaborate pageantry. Castles and cities were decorated with banners, tapestries, and garlands, streets lined with spectators, and musicians, acrobats, and jugglers entertained the crowds. These events showcased wealth, power, and taste, sending a message of prestige to both subjects and rival lords. Nobles would engage in tournaments, archery contests, and banquets that displayed their skill, status, and generosity. These celebrations were as much about diplomacy and influence as they were about enjoyment, ensuring that spectacle and social order remained intertwined. Food and drink played an essential role in both peasant and noble festivals. Roasted meats, pies, bread, cheeses, and owls were staples, while nobles could enjoy imported delicacies, spiced wines, and lavish feasts that sometimes lasted for hours. Eating together reinforced social bonds, and the abundance of food during festivals highlighted the cyclical nature of wealth and labor in medieval society. Sharing a meal, cheering at competitions, or dancing in the town square brought people together, reinforcing a sense of community and shared identity. Music, dance, and storytelling were indispensable companions to festivals. Minstrels, troubadours, and jongleurs traveled between towns, bringing news, songs, and tales that entertained and inspired. Their performances ranged from heroic ballads about knights and battles to humorous anecdotes about local characters and events. Villagers often joined in with singing and dancing, turning passive spectatorship into active participation. Music punctuated the rhythm of festivals, guiding dances, competitions, and ceremonies, while storytelling transmitted local history, legends, and moral lessons, keeping culture and tradition alive across generations. For children, festivals were magical occasions. They could participate in games, races, and performances, try on costumes, and taste foods that were otherwise reserved for adults. Adults, too, found joy in the playful and imaginative aspects of these celebrations. The ordinary world, with its toil and obligations, was replaced for a day by a vibrant realm of color, sound, and collective exhilaration. Festivals reinforced hope, connection, and resilience, reminding people that even in a harsh and unforgiving age, moments of joy and wonder were always possible. As you drift tonight into the medieval world, imagine the smells of roasted meats and fresh bread, the music of flutes and drums, and the laughter of villagers and nobles alike. See dancers twirling around maypoles, jesters performing acrobatics, and children racing through crowded squares. Hear the joyous cries at tournaments, the gentle chime of bells in churchyards, and the mingling voices of communities coming together. Festivals were windows into medieval life, revealing the creativity, resilience, and humanity of people who lived centuries before us. In the next chapter, we will turn our attention to medieval feasts and banquets, exploring the elaborate dishes, dining rituals, and social rituals that transformed eating into both nourishment and spectacle. In the tapestry of medieval life, few occasions rivaled the spectacle, grandeur, and sensory delight of a well-orchestrated feast. Feasts and banquets were the pinnacle of celebration for both nobles and royalty, occasions that combined sustenance, social display, and cultural performance into a single immersive experience. In a world where daily meals were often modest and repetitive, these events transformed eating into a lavish ritual, leaving lasting impressions on both participants and observers alike. For the nobility, a feast was much more than simple nourishment. It was a stage for displaying wealth, power, and sophistication. Castles and great halls were meticulously prepared, with long wooden tables polished to a shine and draped with embroidered cloths. Trestles were laden with platters of roasted meats, freshly baked bread, cheeses, and fruits, while delicate pies and pastries were arranged as ornamental centerpieces. Spices imported from distant lands, cinnamon, cloves, saffron, added exotic fragrance and flavor, emphasizing the host's ability to procure rare and costly luxuries. The display was as much about visual impression as it was about taste. The arrangement, color, and abundance of food demonstrated the noble household's prestige to visiting dignitaries, allies, and rivals. The participants themselves followed strict protocols. Seating arrangements were dictated by rank, with lords, ladies, and distinguished guests occupying positions of honor near the high table. Servants moved with precision, bringing platters and goblets, pouring wine, and attending to the needs of the elite. In some cases, trained waiters would even carve meat at the table, their skill adding an element of theater to the meal. Manners and etiquette were paramount. Gestures, posture, and conversation reflected both personal refinement and social awareness. Even minor breaches of protocol could be noticed and remembered, highlighting how feasts were intertwined with politics, reputation, and influence. Entertainment was an essential component of any medieval banquet. Minstrels, troubadours, and jesters performed between courses, filling the hall with music, storytelling, and light-hearted mischief. Flutes, lutes, drums, and harps created a melodic backdrop, while jesters performed acrobatics, tricks, and witty wordplay that elicited laughter and applause. Occasionally, dramatizations of popular legends or heroic tales would unfold in the hall, allowing guests to witness history and myth come alive before their eyes. The interplay of performance and dining elevated the experience, reinforcing the feast's role as a sensory and social spectacle. One of the most notable features of a medieval banquet was the sheer abundance of food, often served in multiple courses. Meat was central: beef, pork, lamb, venison, and poultry, roasted, boiled, or spiced. Fish, particularly on fasting days, held a prominent place, often presented in elaborate pies or pastries. Sauces and condiments, some sweetened with sugar, others seasoned with herbs, enhanced flavors in ways that modern palates might find both surprising and delightful. Fruits and nuts, fresh or dried, offered sweetness and texture, while extravagant desserts demonstrated culinary skill and opulence. Sugar, rare and costly, was often used to create ornate showpieces, sculpted animals, towers, or entire landscapes made of sugared confections, admired as much for artistry as for taste. Banquets were also a place of ritualized drinking. Wine, ale, and mead flowed generously, with toasts marking occasions, achievements, and alliances. Goblets were often intricately decorated, and the etiquette of drinking, when to raise a cup, how to address the host, and whom to toast, was an essential element of courtly knowledge. Overindulgence could lead to embarrassment, but moderate drinking, accompanied by laughter and conversation, enhanced camaraderie and festivity. For the elite, the combination of food, drink, music, and ritual created a deeply immersive sensory experience that lingered in memory long after the feast concluded. While noble banquets were grand, the meals of the common folk were simpler yet no less significant in their context. Peasants' daily diets were modest, often consisting of bread, porridge, vegetables, and occasionally meat or fish. But even for them, festivals and fairs offered opportunities for communal feasts. Markets would overflow with roasted meats, pies, ale, and sweet treats, providing a temporary abundance that contrasted sharply with everyday scarcity. Villagers gathered around communal tables or shared platters, eating heartily and enjoying the rare chance to relax, converse, and celebrate together. Music, games, and dance often accompanied these meals, making the experience both nourishing and joyful. One vivid illustration of medieval banqueting comes from the court of King Edward I of England. Historical records describe feasts with multiple courses, including elaborate dishes such as roasted swan, peacock, and venison, accompanied by spiced sauces and ornate sugar sculptures. Minstrels performed songs recounting chivalric deeds. Jesters entertained with tricks and riddles, and guests competed in light-hearted contests of wit and skill between courses. The sensory richness of the feast, aromas, tastes, sights, and sounds, combined to create an unforgettable social event, blending culinary expertise with performance and pageantry. Even as feasts showcased excess, they were deeply tied to medieval beliefs and symbolism. Certain foods carried moral or religious connotations, reflecting virtues such as generosity, temperance, or piety. The act of sharing food reinforced social hierarchies, while simultaneously strengthening bonds between individuals and families. For nobles, a successful feast demonstrated competence, hospitality, and authority, while for commoners, participation in communal celebrations reinforced identity, tradition, and connection to the broader community. As you drift tonight into the medieval world, imagine the long wooden tables, groaning under platters of roasted meats and pies, the flicker of candles illuminating tapestries on the walls, the music of lutes and flutes, and the laughter of guests as jesters tumble and storytellers enthrall. Picture peasants sharing bread, an aisle under open skies during a harvest festival, children chasing each other while adults converse, and nobles toasting with goblets of spiced wine. Medieval feasts and banquets were more than meals. They were immersive experiences that brought joy, spectacle, and social cohesion to a world often defined by labor, hierarchy, and survival. In the next chapter, we will explore medieval games and sports, from jousts and archery contests to simpler pastimes, tracing how play offered respite, competition, and community in an era of strict social order. While medieval life was often defined by labor, hierarchy, and survival, people of all classes found ways to entertain themselves through games and sports. These activities ranged from brutal competitions for the nobility to simple, joyful pastimes for peasants, each reflecting the culture, values, and ingenuity of the Middle Ages. For both elite and common folk, games and sports offered a momentary escape, a chance to demonstrate skill, courage, and cunning, and an opportunity to socialize within the strictures of medieval society. Among the nobility, tournaments were the ultimate display of martial prowess and pageantry. These large-scale events brought knights together to compete in jousts, melee combats, and equestrian challenges. The tournaments combined skill, strategy, and spectacle, providing an adrenaline-fueled arena for both participants and spectators. Jousting was perhaps the most celebrated of these events, a test of courage, precision, and strength. Knights, clad in gleaming armor, charged at one another on horseback. Lances aimed squarely at the opponent. Victory was measured by unseating the rival, skillful handling of the lance, or gaining favor from the observing nobility. The stakes were high prestige, prizes, ransoms, and political alliances depended on the outcome. William Marshall, known as one of the greatest knights of the 12th century, was famed for his unparalleled success in tournaments, reportedly winning more than 500 jousts. His skill and bravery made him a celebrity of the medieval world, admired by kings, lords, and commoners alike. Spectators marveled at his technique, and his victories became tales passed down for generations. Other notable figures included Prince Edward of England, whose prowess in tournaments not only cemented his reputation, but also allowed him to navigate the complex political landscape of 13th century Europe. For nobles, games were inseparable from status, honor, and ambition. Melee battles offered another dimension of tournament play, with groups of knights clashing in mock combat that could devolve into chaos. While seemingly dangerous, these melees served as both practice for real warfare and a public spectacle. The thrill of controlled violence, combined with the chance to display individual skill and courage, made such competitions enormously popular. The presence of heralds, judges, and strict codes of conduct ensured that the contests, though risky, maintained a semblance of fairness. Not all sports were reserved for the elite. Archery was widely practiced by men and boys across social classes, partly for recreation and partly as preparation for warfare. Archery contests were common in towns and villages, often accompanied by festivals, music, and feasting. Young archers would test their aim at wooden targets or animal effigies, learning precision, patience, and control. In England, the king even mandated archery practice, recognizing its importance for national defense. Archery contests could bring small prizes or public recognition, and in some cases, the most skilled archers gained entry to noble service or military roles. Hunting, while often an elite pastime, was also a sport that showcased skill, strategy, and cooperation. The hunt combined the thrill of the chase with an appreciation for the natural world. Hunters relied on trained dogs, horses, and sometimes birds of prey to track, corner, and capture quarry. A successful hunt required coordination, patience, and experience, and the resulting meat provided sustenance as well as entertainment. Figures such as Mary of Burgundy and Frederick II of the Holy Roman Empire are remembered for their passion for falconry, blending status, sport, and strategy into an elegant pursuit. Even peasants participated in simpler forms of hunting, though often on a smaller scale and with fewer legal protections. In the urban context, medieval people enjoyed a wide variety of games and pastimes that fostered social interaction and amusement. Dice games, board games, and ball games were common among townsfolk and villagers. Some games, such as tables, a precursor to modern backgammon, or chess, were especially popular with the educated or noble classes. Chess, introduced to Europe from the Islamic world, required strategic thinking, foresight, and mental agility, qualities highly valued in courts and castles. Dice and gambling games offered chance, risk, and excitement, often played in taverns or during festivals. While sometimes frowned upon by religious authorities, these games persisted as enduring sources of recreation. For children, play was vital. Even in a world often dominated by adult responsibilities, youngsters engaged in tag, hoop rolling, mock swordplay, and races. Simple toys made from wood, clay, or fabric provided entertainment, while festivals and fairs allowed children to participate in miniature versions of adult games. Children's play was both a preparation for adult roles and a joyful outlet for imagination and energy. Seasonal sports were closely tied to community life and agricultural rhythms. Maypole dances, harvest games, and carnival competitions allowed peasants and townsfolk to momentarily set aside labor, revel in festivity, and strengthen social bonds. Wrestling, mock battles, and foot races were often central to village celebrations, while music, dance, and costume added layers of spectacle. In these communal events, social hierarchies were softened, and collective participation reinforced identity, belonging, and tradition. Medieval games and sports were not merely diversions. They also reflected societal values and human ingenuity. They emphasized skill, courage, fairness, and entertainment, while providing structured opportunities for social interaction. For nobles, games were intertwined with status, honor, and political maneuvering. For commoners, they offered respite, competition, and community. Across all classes, these activities nurtured resilience, creativity, and enjoyment, providing light and laughter, amid the challenges of medieval life. As you drift tonight into the world of medieval play, imagine the clang of swords in a joust, the whistle of arrows flying toward a target, the laughter of children chasing hoops through village streets, and the cheers of villagers at a harvest game. Visualize nobles racing horses across tournament grounds, peasants wrestling in mud during festival days, and families gathering to play dice or board games by the fireside. Medieval games and sports reveal a universal human desire to find joy, mastery, and connection even in times of hardship. In the next chapter, we will explore medieval festivals and fairs, tracing the lively, chaotic, and sometimes raucous celebrations that punctuated the rhythm of everyday life, blending music, food, theatre, and communal merriment into unforgettable moments of medieval delight. The medieval calendar was punctuated with a variety of festivals and fairs, occasions that broke the monotony of daily toil and offered both peasants and nobles a chance to celebrate, socialize, and enjoy the spectacle of community life. From small village gatherings to grand urban fairs, these events were as diverse as they were lively, blending religious observance, entertainment, commerce, and competition. For a medieval person, a festival was more than mere amusement. It was an essential social institution, a momentary suspension of routine, and often a vital economic opportunity. Among the most widely observed were religious festivals, tied to the feasts of saints, the cycle of Lent, Easter, Christmas, and other church holidays. These celebrations offered moments of spiritual reflection alongside more earthly pleasures. Villagers attended church services, listened to sermons, and participated in processions, but the secular elements of the festival often stole the show. The streets came alive with music, dancing, pageantry, and feasting. People dressed in their finest clothes. Vendors hawked delicacies and wares, and performers entertained the crowds with juggling, acrobatics, and storytelling. One famous example was the Feast of Saint John the Baptist, celebrated in towns across France and England with bonfires, dancing, and contests of skill. Young men and women paraded through the streets, singing songs of courtship while townsfolk cheered. In some regions, water fights, mock battles, and playful competitions were traditional, allowing people to release tension and engage in friendly rivalry. These activities, though seemingly trivial, were deeply rooted in community cohesion, ritual, and tradition. Large fairs were a distinct phenomenon, particularly in urban centers. Unlike village festivals tied to the church calendar, fairs often had a commercial emphasis, drawing merchants, craftsmen, entertainers, and visitors from distant regions. The Champagne fairs in France, for instance, became internationally famous by the 12th century, attracting traders from Italy, Germany, and beyond. Merchants sold textiles, spices, metalwork, and exotic goods, while artisans demonstrated their craft and performers added amusement. Fairs were crucial economic hubs, allowing both towns and traveling traders to prosper. Entertainment at fairs was both imaginative and sometimes bizarre by modern standards. Street performers, jugglers, acrobats, minstrels, and mimes entertained crowds with feats of skill, storytelling, and humor. Some performers, such as Bertrand de Born, a troubadour and poet, were celebrated figures who drew admirers from far and wide. People marveled at tightrope walkers, fire breathers, and animal trainers, whose acts seemed magical and dangerous. The thrill of the spectacle brought communities together, offering shared excitement and memory making. Festivals also incorporated sporting competitions, from archery contests and wrestling to horse races and mock battles. Nobles demonstrated prowess on horseback, knights clashed in mock combat, and peasants engaged in foot races or wrestling matches. Victory brought prestige, material rewards, and social recognition. For example, in York, England, annual May Day games featured competitions for both adults and children, blending athletic skill with playful creativity. These games were often chaotic, exuberant, and loud, a stark contrast to the rigid structure of everyday life. Food played a central role in medieval festivals. Communal feasting allowed villagers and townsfolk to indulge in foods not ordinarily accessible during the hardships of daily life. Roasted meats, pies, breads, cheeses, and seasonal fruits appeared alongside spiced wines and ale. Bakers and cooks took pride in creating elaborate confections for special occasions, while vendors offered sweetmeats, roasted chestnuts, and pastries in village streets. The sharing of food reinforced social bonds, nurtured community spirit, and reminded participants of the cyclical bounty of the land. Music and dance were inseparable from festival life. Minstrels, lutenists, and fiddlers provided soundtracks to revelry, while peasants and nobles alike participated in traditional dances. The carol, a circular dance involving hand, holding and chanting, was common among villagers, symbolizing unity and communal joy. In the courts, dances were more formal and structured, with steps and sequences designed to display elegance, refinement, and social grace. Music and dance offered a form of expression, a release of energy, and a way to participate in the culture of the time. Some festivals featured dramatic performances and morality plays, blending entertainment with education. Traveling troupes would stage stories of saints, biblical events, or allegorical lessons about virtues and vices. Characters such as everyman, representing the common human experience, taught moral principles while engaging audiences with humor, tragedy, and spectacle. These plays transformed public spaces into theaters, inviting communal reflection as well as enjoyment. Carnivals, which occurred prior to Lent, were especially notable for their inversion of social norms. During Carnival, peasants and nobles alike could indulge in mischief, disguise, and satire. Men might dress as women, women as men, and social hierarchies were temporarily blurred. Mock kings, fools, and jesters presided over events, encouraging laughter, revelry, and a playful challenge to authority. Such festivities allowed society to release tension, negotiate social pressures, and celebrate life despite the constraints of medieval hierarchy. Even minor festivals offered opportunities for courtship and social networking. Young people used dances, games, and processions as occasions to meet, converse, and form relationships. Families arranged matches during larger gatherings, hoping for advantageous unions. In smaller villages, even the simplest fair or festival could be a memorable highlight of the year, filled with laughter, storytelling, and shared experience. In some, festivals and fairs were lifelines of medieval life, offering rhythm, structure, and relief from the relentless demands of daily existence. From grand urban fairs to intimate village celebrations, these events blended entertainment, commerce, religion, sport, and social bonding. They reminded participants of their place in the world, connected communities across regions, and preserved traditions that resonated for generations. As you drift into sleep tonight, imagine the bustle of a medieval fair, the clatter of horseshoes, the laughter of children, the strains of lutes and fiddles, the aroma of roasted meats and fresh bread, the cheers of a crowd watching a mock battle, and the colorful banners fluttering in the wind. Festivals were the heartbeat of medieval communities, moments where life's struggles faded into joy, and where the resilience, creativity, and spirit of the people shone most brightly. Feasting in the Middle Ages was more than mere nourishment. It was an elaborate performance of wealth, power, and social connection. From grand banquets in the halls of kings and nobles to humble village meals on festival days. Food was deeply intertwined with culture, status, and communal life. A medieval feast was an event to savor slowly, a blend of sensory indulgence, ritual, and spectacle that could leave a lasting impression on those who partook. At the heart of aristocratic feasting was the Great Hall, a vast space adorned with banners, tapestries, and long wooden tables where lords, ladies' knights, and guests gathered. The hall was both a dining area and a stage, a place where social hierarchies were visible in seating arrangements, the splendor of tableware, and the procession of dishes. The lord and his family sat at the high table, elevated and adorned with the finest linens, silver, and goblets, while the lower, ranked guests occupied benches along the sides. The seating plan reflected rank, favor, and political alliances, a subtle reminder that even during leisure, medieval society was highly structured. A feast began with ceremonial displays. Heralds announced the arrival of guests, minstrels provided music, and entertainers such as jesters, acrobats, and trained animals performed to amuse diners. Sometimes, elaborate pageants preceded the main courses, featuring allegorical or religious themes, mechanical devices, or even mock battles enacted by actors. The spectacle emphasized the host's wealth and cultural sophistication, reinforcing social bonds and hierarchies in a way that mere conversation could not. Food itself was presented with dramatic flair. Dishes arrived in multiple courses, often numbering as many as 10 to 20, ranging from soups and pottages to roasted meats, fish, pies, and sweetmeats. Meat was the centerpiece of noble feasts. Venison, boar, beef, lamb, and poultry dominated tables, often elaborately spiced and roasted. Game birds, such as swan, pheasant, and peacock, were prized for their rarity and exotic presentation. The peacock, for instance, might be served with its feathers reattached for visual effect, a true spectacle of both wealth and creativity. Among the most famous cooks was Guillaume Tyrol, known as Taillevent, chef to the French kings Charles V and Charles VI. His recipes reflected the sophistication of medieval French cuisine, incorporating sugar, spices, and sauces to create dishes both rich in flavor and status. Herbs and spices, including saffron, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg, were imported at great expense from Asia and the Middle East, marking dishes as luxurious. The skillful blending of flavors demonstrated not only the cook's talent, but also the host's resources and worldly connections. Feasts also involved ritualized manners. Guests were expected to follow etiquette carefully, the order of serving, the use of knives and spoons, and the handling of shared dishes reflected social knowledge. For instance, one would use the knife, but not the fork, as forks were rare and considered a sign of extreme sophistication. Hand-washing between courses was customary, performed with basins and towels brought by attendants. Every gesture, from seating to eating, reinforced social norms and status, turning a meal into an orchestrated event of cultural significance. In contrast, common folk experienced food in simpler, more practical terms. Peasants' diets centered on grains, legumes, vegetables, and seasonal fruits. Bread, often coarse and dark, was a staple, while porridge, pottage, and stews provided hearty sustenance. Meat was reserved for special occasions, such as festivals, fairs, or when game was available. Dairy products, eggs, and fish supplemented the diet, especially on religious fast days. While modest, these meals reflected the rhythms of agrarian life, with tastes shaped by the land, season, and availability rather than extravagance. Festivals were occasions when peasants could indulge in rare luxuries. Fairs and village celebrations might offer roasted meats, pastries, honeyed confections, and spiced ales, creating a temporary taste of wealth, for those who labored daily under harsh conditions. These foods were more than sustenance. They were a reminder that life contained moments of pleasure, community, and joy. Children, too, delighted in sweet treats, roasted chestnuts, and simple cakes, creating memories that would linger far longer than the flavor of the food itself. Another essential aspect of medieval cuisine was the role of beverages. Ale and beer were staples for peasants, often safer to drink than water due to brewing boiling processes. Wine, mead, and spiced cordials were reserved for nobles, enhancing meals with variety and indulgence. The presentation of drinks, like the arrangement of food, reflected both wealth and hospitality. Goblets, cups, and pitchers were often decorated, engraved, or gilded, signaling the status of the host and delighting guests, visually as well as gustatorily. Desserts and sweets, although limited by modern standards, had a unique charm. Marzipan, sugar, coated nuts, candied fruits, and pastries demonstrated the creativity and artistry of medieval bakers. Sugar was expensive, imported from distant lands, and thus symbolized both wealth and global connectivity. Confectioners created elaborate designs, sometimes in the shapes of animals, flowers, or heraldic emblems, transforming the end of a meal into a visual and symbolic spectacle. Medieval feasts were not solely about indulgence. They often served political and social purposes. Alliances were forged, favors requested, and reputations cemented over shared meals. Diplomats, knights, and nobles navigated complex social dynamics at the table, where conversation, gestures, and attentiveness could alter fortunes as much as deeds on the battlefield. The careful blending of food, performance, and protocol created a world where taste, sight, and sound converged into a potent form of social expression. As you drift into the gentle embrace of sleep, picture a medieval feast unfoldings. The clinking of goblets, the aroma of roasted meats and fragrant spices, the laughter and chatter of diners, the melodic strains of lutes and flutes, and the vibrant display of dishes, colors, and banners. Feel the warmth of a hearth, the rustle of tapestries, and the sense of connection that meals created across centuries. Medieval feasting was a celebration of life, resilience, and artistry, a momentary escape into abundance and pleasure. Next, we will explore medieval pastimes of the common folk, from board games and sports to storytelling and music, uncovering the everyday joys that brightened lives beyond the grandeur of noble feasts. We will explore medieval feasts and cuisine, tracing the rich, complex, and sometimes exotic foods that graced noble tables and simple village meals, and how these tastes reflected culture, status, and daily survival in the Middle Ages. While the grand halls of kings and nobles were filled with lavish feasts, tournaments, and musical spectacles, the majority of medieval people lived simpler, harsher lives. Yet even in the midst of daily toil, peasants, artisans, and townsfolk found ways to amuse themselves, foster community, and experience moments of joy. Their pastimes were a mixture of play, competition music, storytelling, and seasonal celebration, activities that strengthened social bonds and offered relief from the often grueling rhythms of medieval life. One of the most popular forms of entertainment was games and competitions, played in courtyards, village greens, or open fields. Simple board games, dice games, and card-like games were enjoyed by both adults and children, providing mental challenge and diversion. Nine Men's Morris, a strategic board game carved into tables or stone, was widespread, with players moving pieces to block their opponents. Dice games tested luck and cunning, and though gambling was sometimes frowned upon, or even outlawed by local authorities, it remained an enduring pastime in taverns and marketplaces. Children had their own playful diversions, often using everyday objects as toys. Wooden tops, balls made from stitched rags, hoops rolled with sticks, and miniature carved figurines provided hours of amusement. For peasants, these simple games were not merely entertainment. They were also exercises in coordination, social interaction, and imagination. Festivals and holidays offered opportunities for children to watch performances, listen to music, and participate in communal celebrations, creating memories that would endure throughout their lives. Sports and physical contests were vital parts of common life, both as recreation and displays of skill. Wrestling, archery, and running contests were popular, sometimes coinciding with village fairs or market days. Archery, beyond its entertainment value, served as essential training for military readiness, especially in England, where longbow practice was legally mandated. Local competitions often pitted neighbors against one another, fostering friendly rivalries and community pride. Occasionally, events such as mock battles or informal jests were staged, echoing the martial displays of the nobility, but on a smaller, more playful scale. Music played a central role in everyday amusement. Traveling minstrels, jongleurs, and bards wandered from town to town, performing songs, reciting poetry, and sharing news or tales of heroism. Simple instruments, flutes, fiddles, lutes, drums, and bagpipes allowed both performers and villagers to participate in music making. Songs ranged from humorous ditties and love ballads to epic tales and moral lessons. In village halls or by firesides, villagers might sing together, clap, or dance, creating an immersive, communal form of entertainment that resonated with the rhythms of work and the cycles of nature. Storytelling was another cherished pastime, particularly for passing the long evenings of winter. Elders, monks, or local raconteurs would weave tales of adventure, romance, superstition, and morality, captivating listeners around a fire or in communal spaces. Tales of Robin Hood in England, Finn MacCool in Ireland, and countless local legends in France, Germany, and Italy inspired imagination and offered instruction in courage, loyalty, and cleverness. Listeners could travel vicariously through these stories, experiencing distant lands, heroic deeds, and magical creatures without ever leaving their village. Festivals were perhaps the most significant source of recreation for common folk. The medieval calendar was filled with saints' days, harvest festivals, and seasonal celebrations, each offering an opportunity for revelry. Carnival, preceding the austere period of Lent, was a time when the normal order of society could be lightly overturned. Peasants might mock their lords through humorous plays, wear masks, and indulge in food and drink. May Day brought dancing around the maypole, singing, and feasting. Harvest festivals celebrated the fruits of communal labor with music, food, and games. These moments of collective joy reinforced community cohesion and provided a necessary release from the rigors of agrarian life. In addition to these organized events, the marketplace itself became a hub of amusement. Merchants, street performers, acrobats, and storytellers entertained shoppers, while vendors called out their wares. Children darted through the stalls, sometimes performing impromptu games, while adults enjoyed the chance to socialize, exchange gossip, and observe performers' tricks. Even the simple act of buying or bartering could be infused with social ritual and playful competition, creating a lively atmosphere that enlivened everyday routines. Religious observances also carried an element of communal enjoyment. Processions, pageants, and church festivals often included music, dancing, and dramatized biblical stories. Blending devotion with entertainment, these events allowed villagers to experience a sense of shared identity, spiritual reflection, and aesthetic delight, reminding them that celebration and ritual were not mutually exclusive. Finally, crafts, and hobbies were sources of personal satisfaction and social engagement. Peasants might create simple decorations, embroider textiles, carve wood, or engage in practical yet artistic work. Skilled artisans took pride in their trades, producing objects that were functional, beautiful, and sometimes even whimsical. These pursuits nurtured creativity, patience, and social recognition, contributing to a sense of accomplishment beyond the demands of survival. Even in a world where survival was often uncertain and life could be harsh, common people found moments of laughter, wonder, and human connection. Their pastimes were adaptive, rooted in community, and attuned to the rhythms of work and nature. Through games, music, storytelling, festivals, and craft, they created a rich tapestry of shared experience, revealing that joy and resilience were not the exclusive province of nobility. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the scenes of medieval village life: children running with rag balls, women singing while kneading bread, villagers clapping in time to fiddles, the aroma of roasted meats at a harvest festival, and the soft glow of torches illuminating dancing figures. Picture neighbors sharing jokes, watching jugglers, and marveling at traveling minstrels. These small yet profound pleasures remind us that even in challenging times, the human spirit seeks amusement, connection, and delight. In medieval towns and cities, daily life was structured not only by work and survival, but by a carefully woven social and economic system of guilds. These organizations were far more than mere professional associations. They were vibrant communities that regulated trades, protected standards, and even provided a sense of identity and belonging. For artisans, merchants, and apprentices, guilds offered structure, camaraderie, and sometimes a touch of spectacle. Understanding how these guilds operated illuminates the fascinating interplay between labor, skill, and recreation in the medieval period. A guild was typically organized around a specific trade: blacksmithing, weaving, carpentry, shoemaking, brewing, or tailoring. Membership conferred prestige, access to knowledge, and, in many cases, legal protections. To enter a guild, one often began as an apprentice, a young person, sometimes as young as 12, who lived with a master craftsman and learned the trade through observation, repetition, and hands-on practice. The apprenticeship could last for several years, during which the apprentice was bound to the master, obeying his rules and absorbing the skills needed to advance. For the apprentice, life was rigorous, and yet it was punctuated with moments of training and discovery that could feel almost like play. They learned to shape metal, weave intricate patterns, or carve delicate woodwork under the watchful eye of a mentor. Mistakes were corrected firmly, but cleverness and ingenuity were prized. Many guilds also held social gatherings, banquets, and seasonal celebrations where apprentices and masters could relax, exchange stories, and display their skills in friendly contests. These events were as much about building community as they were about recognizing achievement. After completing an apprenticeship, a young artisan became a journeyman, traveling from town to town to perfect his craft, learn new techniques, and earn wages. The term journeyman itself comes from the French word journée, meaning a day, reflecting the daily rate of pay for their labor. Journeymen were often required to produce a masterpiece, a final work demonstrating mastery of their craft. To gain admission into the guild as a master craftsman, these masterpieces could be breathtaking creations. From a finely wrought sword to an elaborately embroidered tapestry, and they served as a testament to both skill and creativity. Guilds were competitive by nature, and craft competitions were a central feature of medieval trade life. These contests, often held during fairs or festivals, encouraged innovation precision, and aesthetic excellence. Artisans displayed their finest work for public judgment, with prizes ranging from coins to ceremonial recognition and social prestige. For example, a blacksmith might craft a decorative yet functional set of tools, while a weaver might produce an intricate tapestry depicting local legends or religious themes. Townspeople, guild members, and visiting dignitaries might all participate in evaluating the work, making the event both communal and celebratory. Beyond fostering skill and commerce, guilds also served social, religious, and charitable functions. Members were expected to support one another in times of illness or bereavement, to provide for widows and orphans, and to contribute to religious observances, including feast days honoring patron saints of their trade. For instance, the Guild of St. Crispin, patron saint of shoemakers, held annual celebrations combining prayers, banquets, and jovial gatherings that strengthened bonds between members. These occasions were often infused with pageantry, music, and ritual, offering respite from the more monotonous or strenuous aspects of daily labor. Guild halls themselves became hubs of community life. In addition to hosting meetings and workshops, they served as venues for public announcements, social events, and even performances. Apprentices might recite poetry, display humorous sketches, or demonstrate skillful tricks with their tools. Masters might present tales of past exploits or instructive anecdotes. These interactions cultivated a sense of identity, pride, and continuity, connecting generations of craftsmen to one another through shared knowledge and tradition. Interestingly, guild competitions also had a gendered dimension. While most guilds were male-dominated, women often played crucial supporting roles, especially in trades like weaving, brewing, and textile production. Some women even attained formal recognition within the guild system, particularly widows who inherited their husband's business. They might continue running workshops, supervising apprentices, or crafting goods for sale. Women also participated in festive competitions, often judged on skill, ingenuity, or speed in tasks such as embroidery, cooking, or brewing. These moments provided rare opportunities for public visibility and recognition in a society that otherwise restricted women's formal participation in trade and public life. Guilds were not entirely free from rivalry or discord. Towns often had multiple guilds, each protecting its monopoly over a trade. Disputes over quality standards, pricing, and training sometimes led to tense negotiations or even public confrontations. Yet competition was generally tempered by shared norms and values. Artisans recognized that collaboration and communal standards ultimately ensured the prosperity and safety of the trade. For apprentices and journeymen, these dynamics reinforced lessons about discipline, patience, and mutual respect, values that extended beyond the workshop into the wider fabric of medieval society. Amid the structure and ritual, there remained room for whimsy and amusement. Festivals often combined guild displays with theatrical performances, music, and games, turning town squares into lively arenas of entertainment. Artisans might perform mock battles, using tools as props or stage comedic sketches, portraying humorous village life. Children and spectators joined in dances, singing, and simple contests, making these gatherings accessible to all levels of society. Guilds, in this sense, became a bridge between work and play, labor and leisure, skill and spectacle. Even in the context of laborious daily life, the guild system and its competitions fostered creativity, pride, and a sense of belonging. They remind us that medieval people, whether artisan, apprentice, or townsperson, sought more than mere survival. They sought recognition, community, and moments of joy. The elaborate hierarchy of guilds the long journey from apprenticeship to mastery, and the festive competitions of skill and ingenuity were vital threads in the social fabric of medieval towns, weaving together discipline, artistry, and pleasure. As you settle for the night, picture the bustling medieval workshop, apprentices hammering and carving, journeymen demonstrating prowess to approving masters, guild members gathered in animated conversation, and children laughing as they chase each other around the town square. Hear the rhythmic clinking of tools, the murmur of approval, and the occasional burst of song or laughter. Imagine the warmth of the communal hearths, the scent of fresh timber and ink, and the quiet pride of a masterpiece completed. In this world, labor and leisure danced hand in hand, shaping lives, communities, and the enduring spirit of creativity. We will explore medieval festivals and seasonal celebrations, diving deeper into how ritual, revelry, and recreation intertwine to create joy, spectacle, and cultural cohesion in towns and villages. In the rhythm of medieval life, work and survival dominated most days. Yet, scattered throughout the year were moments of respite and joy. Festivals and seasonal celebrations, where towns and villages transformed into vibrant arenas of music, dance, color, and communal delight. These occasions were eagerly anticipated, offering not only entertainment but also a sense of unity, identity, and continuity in a world often harsh and unpredictable. One of the most widely celebrated events was Carnival, the indulgent festival preceding the austere season of Lent. Carnival combined ancient pagan traditions with Christian observances, creating a few days when the usual social hierarchies were loosened and revelry could flourish. Streets were decorated with colorful banners and garlands, markets bustled with vendors selling sweets, fruits, and novelty items, and townspeople donned masks and costumes, temporarily stepping into other identities. Noblemen might dress as commoners, children as tiny knights or fairies, and guild members as mythical characters, blurring the boundaries between social ranks. The air was thick with music, laughter, and the smell of roasted meats and freshly baked pastries. Among the common people, saints' feast days offered special opportunities for communal gatherings. Each town often had a patron saint, whose day was marked by processions, church services, and fairs. Villagers would display banners bearing the saint's image, and musicians would perform in the streets, playing lutes, flutes, and drums. Merchants sold charms, trinkets, and devotional items, while performers, jugglers, minstrels, and acrobats entertained crowds of all ages. These occasions often combined the sacred with the celebratory, reminding participants of both spiritual and worldly pleasures. Harvest festivals were another cornerstone of medieval festivity, particularly in agrarian communities. After months of toil in the fields, villagers gathered to celebrate the season's bounty. Feasts featured bread, pies, roasted meats, cheeses, and seasonal fruits, accompanied by wine, cider, or ale. Harvest dances, often led by the village fiddler, invited everyone to join hands and spin, stomp, and twirl, while singing songs of gratitude, love, and merriment. Young men and women engaged in playful contests, leaping over hay bales, racing through meadows, or tossing apples to see who could catch the most. These games, simple yet joyous, fostered social bonds, courtship opportunities, and a shared sense of achievement for the year's labors. In cities, trade fairs combined commerce with entertainment, attracting merchants, artisans, and spectators from distant regions. Stalls overflowed with exotic spices, textiles, jewelry, and tools, creating a kaleidoscope of sights, smells, and sounds. Performers mingled with shoppers, offering storytelling, puppet shows, acrobatics, and animal tricks. Wealthy visitors admired displays of craftsmanship, while children chased each other through the bustling crowd, squealing with delight. Fairs provided not only economic opportunity, but also a sense of spectacle, where townsfolk could temporarily step outside the routine of their daily work. Noble households contributed their own flair to festivals. Feasts in castles and manor halls were elaborate affairs, combining culinary artistry with pageantry. Servants carried platters heaped with roasted meats, pastries, and delicacies seasoned with saffron, cloves, or honey. Jugglers, minstrels, and jesters entertained guests, while noblemen and women sometimes competed in mock tournaments, archery contests, or dancing competitions. Music resonated through vaulted halls, lutes and harps providing gentle accompaniment to lively conversation, storytelling, and laughter. The walls themselves, adorned with tapestries depicting heroic or religious scenes, witnessed generations of celebration, echoing with the rhythms of life and joy. Some festivals were seasonally or agriculturally inspired, tied to solstices, equinoxes, or planting cycles. May Day, for instance, heralded spring with floral decorations, the crowning of a May Queen, and dances around the maypole. Villagers celebrated fertility, growth, and renewal, honoring the natural cycles that sustained their lives. In contrast, All Hallows' Eve foreshadowed winter and the darker season of the year. Communities marked it with rituals, storytelling, and sometimes mischief, honoring ancestors while acknowledging the fragile boundary between the living and the spirit world. These celebrations offered not just amusement, but reflection, linking daily life to the rhythms of the natural and spiritual world. Festivals also nurtured cultural and artistic expression. Minstrels recited epic tales of knights and heroes, while troubadours performed songs of love and valor. Puppet shows and traveling theater troupes illustrated moral lessons or local legends, often employing humor to engage audiences of all ages. Craftsmen displayed intricate handiwork, from finely woven textiles to carved wood and metal pieces, while apprentices demonstrated their burgeoning skills. Spectacle and skill combined to entertain, educate, and instill pride in local identity and heritage. Throughout these celebrations, individuals, whether noble or peasant, artisan or scholar, found moments of connection, delight, and respite. Festivals allowed people to laugh, dance, compete, and simply exist outside the pressures of everyday labor. They reinforced social bonds, celebrated shared beliefs, and offered sensory pleasure, the smell of spiced pies, the shimmer of lanterns, the harmony of music, and the laughter of children chasing one another through sunlit squares. Imagine, as you drift towards sleep, a medieval town at the height of a festival. Lanterns sway in the evening breeze, casting soft light on cobbled streets. The scent of roasted meats mingles with fresh, baked bread. Lutes and flutes provide a gentle soundtrack, while villagers dance, converse, and cheer in joyful camaraderie. Children weave between the feet of adults, squealing with delight as performers juggle and twirl. In the distance, a procession winds through the square, banners fluttering and colors blending in a visual symphony of communal celebration. The air vibrates with music, laughter, and the gentle rhythm of human connection, a timeless echo of joy. These festivals and celebrations remind us that, even in a world of toil, uncertainty, and hardship, medieval people found ways to pause, rejoice, and create memories. They reveal the enduring human desire for connection, pleasure, and storytelling. Through feast, dance, and spectacle, communities affirmed life, nurtured creativity, and shared in collective delight. As the night draws on, picture yourself among these revelers, feeling the warmth of the crowd, hearing the music floating on the evening air, tasting the rich flavors of a harvest feast, and watching the flicker of lantern light across jubilant faces. Let these scenes of medieval festivity lull you gently, carrying you into a peaceful sleep, and prepare your mind for the next chapter. Chivalric adventures and heroic deeds, where gallant knights, daring quests, and tales of honor await to whisk you further into the medieval world. The medieval world was a tapestry of contrasting realities, of peasants laboring from dawn to dusk, merchants counting coins, and kings plotting battles. But it was also a world where tales of chivalric adventures ignited imaginations and inspired hearts. These stories, woven from courage, loyalty, honor, and often perilous quests, were the lifeblood of noble culture and the whispered dreams of common folk. Knights were not only warriors, they were symbols, performers on a stage where valor, romance, and morality intertwined. A knight's life was rigorous and demanding, starting with training in the arts of combat. Boys from noble families often began as pages in another lord's household, learning etiquette, horsemanship, and the use of arms. At around the age of 14, a page could become a squire, serving a knight directly, assisting with armor, horses, and weapon maintenance, while refining swordsmanship, jousting, and archery skills. The culmination of this journey was knighthood, a ceremony steeped in ritual, where the young warrior swore an oath of loyalty, honor, and service, both to his lord and to the ideals of chivalry. One of the most celebrated knights of his age was Sir William Marshal, whose life epitomized the chivalric code. Born in 1146 as the youngest son of a minor noble, William's early years seemed destined for obscurity, yet his courage, skill, and loyalty propelled him to unparalleled heights. Throughout his career, Marshal engaged in hundreds of tournaments, defeating opponents from across Europe and earning both fame and wealth. His prowess extended beyond the battlefield. He was also a master strategist, diplomat, and advisor to kings. For young nobles and aspiring knights alike, his deeds became the gold standard of chivalric behavior. Tournaments themselves were microcosms of chivalric adventure. These elaborate events tested knights' skills with lance, sword, and mace, while offering opportunities to gain prestige, wealth, and the admiration of noble ladies. Spectators, ranging from peasants to royalty, watched in rapt attention as armored combatants clashed on the field. The stakes were high, serious injuries were common, and in some contests, even death was possible. Yet the allure of glory, the thrill of competition, and the promise of honor made these contests irresistible. Beyond the tournament grounds, knights undertook quests that often involved perilous journeys, moral challenges, and heroic exploits. Some quests were practical, such as defending a lord's lands, escorting pilgrims, or safeguarding treasures. Others were steeped in legend and imagination, blending elements of romance, myth, and moral allegory. Tales of knights rescuing maidens, recovering sacred relics, or defeating dragons captivated audiences, both young and old. These stories emphasized the knight's virtues: courage, loyalty, generosity, and courtesy toward women and the weak. One such adventure recounts the deeds of Sir Galahad, a legendary figure of Arthurian lore. Known for his purity, skill in combat, and unwavering devotion to the Holy Grail, Galahad's journey was one of spiritual as well as martial heroism. He faced insurmountable odds, tested by temptations, ambushes, and moral dilemmas. Through every trial, his courage and honor shone brightly, providing a beacon of hope and inspiration for his companions and those who heard of his exploits. Stories like Galahad's were both entertaining and instructive, reinforcing societal ideals while transporting listeners to a world of wonder and possibility. Chivalric adventures also served as social glue, reinforcing bonds between lords, vassals, and communities. Knights who displayed valor in battle earned recognition and respect, not only from their peers, but also from the people they protected. Their deeds were commemorated in songs, poems, and chronicles, ensuring that courage and honor were remembered long after the battlefield had quieted. Minstrels and troubadours traveled from castle to castle, performing these tales for nobles and commoners alike, spreading moral lessons and heroic inspiration throughout the land. Romance and courtly love were inseparable from the chivalric ideal. Knights often undertook daring exploits to honor the lady of their affection, blending personal ambition with devotion. Lady Eleanor of Aquitaine, for instance, inspired countless knights with her beauty, wit, and political acumen. Noblewomen served not only as patrons of chivalric deeds, but also as arbiters of etiquette, fashion, and social conduct. The bond between knight and lady, whether expressed through tournaments, quests, or poetry, added layers of emotional resonance to the adventures, reminding participants and audiences alike that courage and tenderness could coexist. Not all knights were flawless paragons of virtue. Many were flawed, ambitious, or even reckless, and their adventures sometimes veered into morally ambiguous territory. The tale of Sir Lancelot, for instance, intertwines heroism with personal failings, illustrating that chivalry was not merely about perfection, but the striving toward honor despite human frailty. These stories added depth, complexity, and realism to the medieval imagination, showing that valor often required discernment, humility, and moral courage. As you imagine these scenes, picture the clang of swords on armor in the golden light of dawn, the thunder of hooves across dewy meadows, and the triumphant cheer of spectators as a knight emerges victorious. Hear the lutes and harps accompanying troubadours' songs. Feel the thrill of a daring rescue or the suspense of a mystical quest, and sense the quiet moments of reflection by candlelight. When a knight contemplates duty, loyalty, and the next great endeavor, these experiences were not merely spectacle. They were exercises in courage, patience, and imagination, a template for a life of action and principle. Chivalric adventures, at their heart, remind us that even in a world governed by hardship, conflict, and rigid hierarchies, there was room for heroism, creativity, and human aspiration. Knights ventured forth into forests, castles, and battlefields not only to fight, but also to embody ideals that resonated across generations. Through tales of valor, loyalty, and daring, medieval society celebrated courage, honor, and the enduring power of narrative to inspire and comfort. So, as you drift towards slumber, picture yourself in a medieval landscape, standing on a misty hill as armored knights ride across the horizon, banners fluttering and lances glinting in the early light. Hear the distant music of a minstrel, smell the fresh scent of hay and earth, and feel the quiet anticipation of a great adventure just beginning. Let these images soothe and transport you, carrying you deeper into the medieval world, where heroism, honor, and wonder await in the next chapter. 21st century echoes of medieval adventures, bridging past and present, legend and memory. As we come to the final chapter of our journey through medieval amusements, it is worth pausing to consider the enduring legacy of the games, pastimes, and spectacles that shaped life in the Middle Ages. What survives is more than dusty manuscripts and faded tapestries. It is a glimpse into the human desire for joy, creativity, and storytelling that transcends centuries. From tournaments to falconry, feasts to festivals, medieval entertainment reflected both the societal hierarchy of the time and the universal longing for amusement and connection. The most visible and celebrated form of entertainment in medieval Europe was, of course, the tournament. These events, which ranged from chaotic melees to structured jousts, captured the imagination of peasants and nobility alike. Knights like William Marshall and Sir Lancelot became legends not only because of their skill in combat, but because they embodied ideals of courage, loyalty, and honor. Even today, the spectacle of a knight riding at full gallop toward a lance, with banners fluttering and crowds cheering, continues to captivate the imagination. Medieval tournaments have left a mark on modern sports and public pageantry. From the Olympic Games to historical reenactments, echoing the thrill of competition and the celebration of skill. Beyond tournaments, the arts of hunting and falconry showcase the relationship between humans and animals in ways that were as practical as they were symbolic. Noble hunts offered the dual rewards of sustenance and sport, while falconry combined status, discipline, and elegance in a single pursuit. Figures like Mary of Burgundy, with her falcons perched regally on her gloved arm, remind us that these pastimes were not merely for amusement. They were expressions of identity, power, and taste. Modern hunting traditions and falconry clubs still honor these practices, blending historical skill with ethical appreciation for wildlife. Feasts, fairs, and carnivals were central to the cultural life of towns and villages. Even peasants, often constrained by the demands of labor and survival, found moments of respite during seasonal festivals. Feast days celebrated the cycles of nature, religious observances, and communal identity. These gatherings were vibrant spectacles, filled with music, dance, storytelling, and games, offering a contrast to the harshness of daily life. Today's public festivals, Renaissance fairs, and street carnivals draw inspiration from these medieval celebrations, preserving a spirit of communal joy that transcends time. Another enduring contribution was the oral and written storytelling tradition. Minstrels, troubadours, and chroniclers transformed heroic deeds, moral tales, and whimsical anecdotes into narratives that entertained, instructed, and inspired. The adventures of knights, the antics of jesters, and the romantic exploits of noblewomen were recounted across villages and courts alike, blending entertainment with moral and social instruction. In many ways, medieval storytelling laid the groundwork for modern literature, theater, and even cinematic storytelling, demonstrating the timeless human craving for tales that transport us beyond our immediate experience. Chivalric ideals, central to the medieval ethos, continue to influence contemporary concepts of honor, courage, and loyalty. While the rigid social hierarchy of the Middle Ages has long since evolved, the stories of knights defending the weak, upholding justice, and striving for virtue resonate in modern narratives of heroism. From literature and film to video games and role-playing adventures, figures like Sir Galahad, whose purity and dedication to the Holy Grail inspire generations, exemplify archetypes that persist in contemporary culture, reminding us that the values embedded in medieval pastimes extend far beyond their historical context. The Middle Ages were also a time of innovative entertainment technology, in a manner suited to their era. Mechanical devices, pageant wagons, and elaborate stagecraft brought drama to towns and fairs, while musical instruments, from lutes and harps to bagpipes and drums, added rhythm and harmony to daily life and special events. These innovations reflect the medieval drive to entertain, astonish, and inspire, highlighting creativity under constraints. Modern theater, music festivals, and multimedia productions owe a subtle debt to the ingenuity of medieval performers who combined artistry, skill, and spectacle to captivate audiences. Moreover, the human connection embedded in these activities is perhaps their most enduring legacy. Whether a noblewoman watching her falcon strike its prey, a peasant cheering in the village square during a festival, or a knight rising to fame in a jousting tournament, medieval entertainment was fundamentally about shared experience. It fostered community, reinforced cultural identity, and offered moments of beauty, humor, and respite in a challenging world. This emphasis on communal joy and storytelling continues to shape modern entertainment. From live concerts and sporting events to online communities and interactive gaming. As we close this exploration, it is fascinating to consider the ways medieval entertainment mirrored life itself. Danger, risk, and unpredictability were constant companions in tournaments and hunts, reflecting the uncertainties of daily existence. Humor, romance, and spectacle offered relief and delight, reminding people of the joys that persisted even in difficult times. The balance between hardship and pleasure, duty and amusement, discipline and creativity was woven into the very fabric of medieval culture, creating a nuanced and enduring portrait of human experience. So, as you settle into your pillow and let your mind drift, imagine the echoes of medieval cheer and clamor. Picture knights raising their helmets in triumph, falcons swooping through misty skies, villagers dancing in the square to the rhythm of a drum, and minstrels strumming lutes beneath the starlit heavens. Imagine the laughter, the awe, and the quiet moments of reflection after a day filled with exertion, skill, and delight. Allow these images to lull you into restful slumber, carrying with you the gentle reminder that even centuries ago, humans sought joy, connection, and wonder in the moments they could claim as their own. From the grandest castle halls to the humblest village green, the entertainments of the medieval world continue to whisper across time. They remind us that history is not just a series of dates and events, but a living tapestry of experiences, feelings, and stories that shape who we are. The Middle Ages may have ended long ago, yet the laughter, heroism, and ingenuity of its people endure, inviting us to dream, imagine, and perhaps even partake in their eternal dance of life and celebration. Good night, dear listener. May the spirit of medieval adventures, noble feats, and playful diversions guide you into a peaceful sleep, where castles, knights, and minstrels accompany your dreams, and history becomes both a sanctuary and a playground for your imagination.